Yeah! Yes! Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who, at one point, owned Eric Karlsson in their keeper pools. One who currently owns Eric Karlsson in his keeper pool, though he's kind of letting me down lately. We'll get to him later on in the show. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky. With me, as always, Brian Kalm.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everyone. Happy Grey Cup Day, or past the day after Grey Cup. Who'd you have? Toronto Argonauts, Calgary Stampeders.
What? I didn't even know this was happening.
It's happening right now in a very snowy field. This is like the one Canadian football event that Americans do find out about, and it's worth it. I think it's shaping up to be another great game this year, but we have hockey to talk about. Isn't that what we're here for?
It's funny that you say that like this is the game that Americans care about. I literally did not hear one thing about this game.
Well,
and I'm a Canadian.
Usually in like my general like outside Canada sports sources, you know, someone's got I'll come across a highlight of a Grey Cup clip.
Sure. Okay.
It's always an exciting game.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, a league with 7 teams sounds like really exciting. But okay, why don't we talk about some fantasy hockey here? We are a fantasy hockey podcast. We are trying to be the best fantasy hockey podcast out there, and that's why we're so proud to be presented by the best fantasy hockey website out there. That's, of course, DobberHockey.com. They've got great articles every day. They've got these like feature articles all the time, really in-depth looks at players and if their play is sustainable or fleeting, you know, just like what we try to do on the podcast. A bunch of tools over on Frozen Pools, like the starting goalies and the line combinations. Like, it's all there. Check it out, DobberHockey.com. They're great. But with that, let's get started, Brian. A lot to get to this week. I've got injuries for you. Outjuries, of course, some like interesting line changes on teams. I've got hot streaks, cold streaks, got a whole slew of it. You ready? You ready to take this on?
So ready.
I'm going to ask you like 100 questions, and let's start at the top. The number one fantasy hockey headline of the week. Let's start in outjuries, and let's go to Montreal. We have to start here because Carey Price finally returned from his injury against Buffalo yesterday, and guess what? Like nothing. 36 save shutout. Boom! Carey Price is back. Brian, you were already high on Price before when he was doing so badly. I remember suggesting, I don't know if you recall, like when he was playing so badly, I was like, this guy just needs to take a vacation, fake an injury. I had my little conspiracy theory. We'll never know if it was true or not, but clearly this time off helped, at least for this first game against Buffalo. You mentioned that you're only concerned about him. You were like, everything's going to be fine. My only concern is this injury. Does the fact that he had this dominant win against the Sabres ease your concerns? Hello?
Hey, you cut out.
Okay.
Now I hear you.
Did you guys in the chat? Hey, everyone in the chat, by the way. Hello. Did you guys hear me, or did I cut out? I just need to know if I should take this again or not.
No, I think it's me.
Price goes for yeah. Okay, everyone heard me. Cool. Brian, all right. Is your internet cord connected to your internet machine?
The cord is connected to my internet machine. We'll give it another go. If it messes up again, I'll go check on it. So how did you end?
I said
the way that I expected you to.
Did Price's dominant win ease your concern about his injury being the only thing that might hold him back?
Got it. Hey, Cody. Does this dominant win ease my concerns? Does it ease your concerns? Is the question. My concerns were, okay, well, they were there. Like, I was worried about the injury, and like, we can't get too excited about this. I'm not going to go around parading saying I was right about anything. It was Buffalo, the worst team in the league this year. Well, I guess you have Arizona competing, but certainly deserving of the title of the worst team in the league so far this year. So a nice game for him to come into, get his feet wet again, get set. The question will be, can he continue it? I still think he'll be able to, assuming that he actually is 100% and the Canadians have not botched his injury recovery this time around.
Oh my God. My dog is going nuts out there. My wife is out of town. There's no one to shut up the dog. What do I do?
I think you just mentioned that Cody's going to be guesting on the show this week. And,
I feel like she probably
and we
something.
just roll with it. The whole episode will have a dog barking in the background.
Are you guys enjoying this in the chat room? The internet issues, the dog issues? It's fun, right? But we got you 2 minutes of content about Carey Price, so it's not like you've got nothing. She just hears something in the hallway, then she'll like chill out. I think she's done. Oh no. Should I go? Should I go check on her? Oh, you don't even hear the dog. All right, let me just go. All right, let's just keep going. Okay. So what did you say? Just kidding. Okay. You said how did you end that?
I said as long as they don't botch his injury recovery as they have in the past, okay. I'm still feeling good about him.
So are you feeling so good about him, Brian? Are you gonna say he's like tier 1? You're gonna bump him above all those goalies that are ahead of him in save percentage this year? Like you're fully in. You always were. So I guess we could just move on about Carey Price. Like I don't know. I'm trying to squeeze something out of you. There's no reason to.
I never said he wasn't tier 1, so I am just going to continue all along. If anyone's going to have to change their position, well, it's going to be one of us. You said he's not. I said he is. We'll see in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of thing where I'm very curious to see if this vacation has served him well and if he and the Habs can go on a nice streak. So, okay, Charlie Lindgren goes back to the minors. He had a .924 save percentage in his 8 games that he played. So that was really good. He kind of struggled a bit at the end, but whatever. You know, he's young and hopefully we'll see him back. We'll mention him again on the podcast at some time. Obviously, you could drop him now if you're still holding on. Antti Niemi pulled off a not terrible game in his start at Nashville where the Habs lost 3-2 in OT. So with Montoya injured, I guess Antti Niemi is the backup now on the Habs. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when Montoya is back, like what they'll do with those 2 goalies. I know I kind of blew it. I really thought that betting against Niemi when he would play would be like easy money, and then they lost, but it was only a 3-2 OT loss. I'm still thinking that the next time Niemi plays would be a good bet to bet against him, but good for him to have like one more, if at all, like final game in the NHL. Brian, also on the Habs, Shea Weber has been day-to-day with a lower body injury now for a while. He's missed 3 games. Jeff Petrie scored a power play goal yesterday in his absence. It looks like Petrie's on the top unit right now with Pacioretty and Galchenyuk, Drouin, and Shaw, who is there somehow, not doing anything there, but he's there. Is Jeff Petrie worth a stream while Weber is out? He was pointless in 7 before the goal yesterday, so he hadn't been doing much, but top power play defensemen, they're usually not too easy to find.
Yeah, only while Weber is out is he worthwhile. If you were the sort of person who needed to stream in Marco Scandella to beef up your D, this is a similar situation, although it seems as though Weber could be back before long. Another Montreal defenseman, by the way, who's seen a bump with Weber out is Joe Morrow. He averaged 13 minutes over his first 11 games this year, and those games didn't include opening night, and he missed several others as a healthy scratch, but he's been leaned on lately. He's averaged over 20 minutes in his last 4 games, playing on the second power play unit, a goal and assist for 2 points, 8 shots, and 7 blocks in his last 3 games, but that's an even deeper cut than Jeff Petrie.
Yeah, I have a feeling that, like, tweet at us if you're in a league where Joe Morrow is owned. I guess nice to see him going on a nice run. Petrie also helps with some peripherals. He's taken a bunch of shots, so he looks good in the short term on the top power play. Someone who's not looking good on the Habs, Max Pacioretty. He's pointless in 6 now. He started the season slow. We said, hold on, he'll be fine. He's like taking a ton of shots. Then he went on this great run. I felt like, oh, good. Like, I was smart. Like, Brian and I were smart. We helped you guys. We told you, hold on, don't worry about it. And then you guys would shower us with praise as Pacioretty would go on and have a great season. We were like, buy low. Now he's cold again. So is it going to be the same advice, or are you seeing something different now in this current cold run? He's playing on a line with Shaw and Dano, and not having Weber can't be great for him. So like, he's not around great players. That can't be good for him getting back to being like a sure thing 65-point guy.
So this is what you would think, but surprisingly, Pacioretty playing with Shaw and Dano has been way more successful as a line than Pacioretty playing with Drouin and Galchenyuk, which has been the second most common trio that Pacioretty's been a part of. Playing with Shaw and Dano, Pacioretty's line has scored 8 goals in 150 even strength minutes. His line with Drouin and Galchenyuk has failed to score in 50 even strength minutes over 10 games together, and they're also getting filled in possession-wise. So that is why I am not all that concerned about Max Pacioretty playing with Philip Deneau and Andrew Shaw, even though on the surface you would think you should be.
Okay, so fine. Wait. Oh, she's barking again.
How are you? Do you want to just like give a caveat and then just roll through it every time?
Well, I could let her into the bedroom and lock her in here. Maybe that'll be better. Okay, I'm gonna do that. But Brian, you didn't actually answer. I guess I'll ask. Like, what about his? You said that he's been on this good line, but you didn't say anything about like if there's something to be concerned about.
So do you want me to say that or?
Dave is saying he doesn't
wanna...
hear a dog. Does no one in the chat hear this dog bark? How is that possible that Brian hears it?
It's very strange. Maybe they're not listening through headphones.
Google. I wonder if you and I are getting like a really premium feed and then everyone else gets garbage. All right, I'm going to bring Cody in and then we will continue and you could finish talking or I'll ask you a question here. Okay, 1 sec. Sorry.
Okay, they hear it. Everyone hears it.
Cody, shut up.
So rude. That's how Elon talks to me sometimes.
Here, let's get your toys.
He also offers me toys. So how's everyone doing tonight? Can anyone update me with the Grey? Can we get Grey Cup updates? I guess it's the halftime show. So Shania Twain is performing. I would love to get regular Grey Cup updates. I'm hoping to catch the end of the game still.
Enough with the Grey Cup. You always watch like last week was Jeopardy and this week the Grey Cup.
Yeah, live TV. Who does that anymore?
I don't know what. Anyway, whatever. You live your life. I don't care. All right.
It sounds like you're offended.
I'm not offended. It's just silly.
What's silly about what? That's like me saying you like you want to watch a hockey game and I mock you for watching it live. I don't understand.
I don't know. I didn't know you were. I didn't know you were a Grey Cup guy. You haven't mentioned any Canadian football or mentioned being interested in anything going on all year long. And then I guess you just want to watch the Grey Cup because you're a good Canadian boy.
I'm a passive observer through the year, but the Grey Cup has reliably been a very exciting game. And I watched the semifinals last week. They were very good.
I'm sorry that we have to take you from it. You're gonna miss the whole thing.
Well, I'm hoping to catch the end, is what I was saying, but I probably won't.
All right. Dave, I'll show Cody at the end. We gotta go. We gotta do the show. Brian's gotta get to the Grey Cup. All right. I wish I could like do some sort of. Okay. I don't know. Edit. Oh.
Use your timer.
Oh, that was dumb. Okay, I just wanted to say that this is the point to go to, but no, it's okay. It was just a stupid thing. Sit down. You're good. You're good. Okay.
I wish you'd speak to me that way.
She's very stressed out right now. Her mom hasn't been home for a long time. All right, yeah, I'll just do an edit point here.
Does that make you her dad?
Her dad, of course. All right. Okay, I'm gonna go.
Okay.
Okay, so you're saying you're not worried about his line. Fine. What about this 6-game pointless streak?
Yeah, so going back to your original question, I have the same advice as before with Pacioretty. Just hang on. Weber being out is tough for everyone in Montreal, and Pacioretty's even strength shot attempts over the last few games have waned a little bit, but not enough for me to think that this is going to be a trend. So hang on for now. Weber back on the top power play unit, hopefully before long, should at least help towards getting that piece of production back for Pacioretty, and I still think the rest will come.
Okay, well, we'll check back in a little bit. Sounds like you're saying don't sound the alarm bells yet. You're not seeing anything too scary in this lack of production. Okay, Brian, so one of the people who couldn't score on Carey Price yesterday was another guy who's back, Rasmus Ristolainen. He's back, and he's been playing 2 games now for the Sabres. He had a much nicer first game than his second game against the Habs. In his first game against the Oilers, he put up 2 assists, 5 shots, 3 hits, 6 blocks. Like a super game. Then yesterday against the Habs, 2 shots, 5 hits, 4 blocks, no points, obviously, since Buffalo got shut out. But yeah, these are some beastly bangers and mash numbers to go along with the offense that should come from a top power play D-man who put up 45 points last year. In my opinion, Ristolainen is a must-add in any league where he was dropped while he was injured. I've heard like a couple of our patrons on Facebook were saying, oh, Ristolainen was dropped while he was injured. Should I add him? I'm surprised. I guess some leagues don't have enough IR spots for all of these injuries. Anyways, do you concur? Like, I feel like, yeah, he had his slow start of 5 points in 13 games, but I feel like he's going to be fine. And especially if you're counting hits and blocks, you got to grab Rasmus Ristolainen. I'm curious, like, what point pace are you expecting from him moving forward?
You must add him for sure. He's actually available in, again, a surprising amount of my leagues because of a lack of IR spots. Probably not if your league has enough to keep him in a safe place for whoever drafted him. I would have Ristolainen at a 0.5 point per game pace the rest of the way. And some might think that's too low because, hey, like he's the top power play guy. Others might think it's too high because, hey, he's on Buffalo. But as rough as Buffalo looks at even strength, their top power play is still a talented enough collection of people to help Ristolainen get north of 20 points on the power play. So that's why I still have him. Like, that's going to be what boosts him up to a half point per game pace. And it's also, as an aside, nice to see the blocks come back too since he's returned. We'll see if that holds up.
Maybe another one of these players who just needed a little bit of vacation to get their head on straight. Maybe these injuries aren't so bad. We take them as such bad news when one of our players gets injured. Maybe an early season injury. Put a pin in that. This is just an idea I had just right now. I wonder how good players are at bouncing back from early season injuries. Anyways, by the way, Brian, fun fact about the Buffalo Sabres. They currently have no defensemen who have scored a goal this year. They're the only team in that category. That's crazy, right? What's the likelihood that Ristolainen will be the first defenseman to score on Buffalo? I feel like it's like 80% likely.
I'm going even higher, 95%. Who else is going to score it? Nathan Beaulieu?
Scandella.
Josh Georges? Jake McCabe? Victor Antipin?
You don't think Scandella? I think Scandella's the second, most likely.
Scandella had plenty of time to do it while Ristolainen was out. You're right. I suppose he's probably the one with the next best chance. And it's going to be a fluke if it's anyone but Ristolainen.
Yeah, this will be a fun thing to track. Okay, another outjury. We're on the outjury section. I don't have to say another outjury. You know it's going to be another outjury. On Minnesota, Charlie Coyle is back. He wasn't in a great spot playing on line 3 with Tyler Ennis and Zach Mitchell for his first couple games back, but looks like he was finally promoted mid-game yesterday to play with Eric Stahl and Nino Niederreiter. He also saw a power play 2 time with Stahl, Zucker, Marcus Foligno, Dumba, who, by the way, sometimes it looks like Jonas Brodin has been playing on the second power play instead of Marcus Foligno. Like, who really cares? But to give you a thorough analysis of the Minnesota second power play, there you go. So yeah, Charlie Coyle, he had 2 assists in 3 games before his injury. He's had a goal and an assist in 4 games since returning, though I feel like, should we really even pay attention to what he's done so far since returning, since he was in the bottom 6? Now we're expecting him to be in the top 6 next week. Coyle had 56 points last year. It was a breakout year for him. Are you expecting a similar pace this year, or was he overachieving last year?
Like all Wild forwards, Charlie Coyle was overachieving last season, but not to an awful extent. In fact, he's probably the one who was producing most sustainably. So that's why last year he had 56 points. So I still like him to land close to 55 points this season.
Okay, well, that's good news, and he's probably available in a lot of leagues. So take a look, like 55 points. That's pretty good. You're saying pace, right?
Yeah, pace for sure. If I wanted to, like, I'd say 50 to 55 point range, because of course it depends on deployment. If he's bumped back out of this spot he's in now, and you know the promotion seems to be just temporary, of course that's going to affect his pace the rest of the way. But in a good top 6 spot, I think he'll be good. 50 is too low, 55 closer to 55 than 50. How about that?
I'm actually surprised. You're usually so stingy with your point paces. I was expecting you to say like maybe 50 point pace, considering last year was the first year he'd ever broken 50. But you've always liked Charlie Coyle.
I like Charlie Coyle.
Okay. And so, Brian, you know who is doing really well on Minnesota lately? I'll tell you, everyone. It's starting to look a lot like last year again. Like over the past 2 weeks, this is 7 games. Mikael Granlund, 10 points, 18 shots. Eric Stahl, 9 points. Koivu, 7 points. Again, in 7 games. Niederreiter, 7 points. All goals. 7 goals in 7 games. Spurgeon's got 5 points in 7, though he's pointless in 3. But whatever. Anyways, as I'm saying, like the top 6, they're all doing really well. Zucker has 5 points in his last 7. Do you expect these productions to be somewhat sustainable? Like, which players are you liking? Which ones are you not? I know it's a broad question, but like, for example, Granlund, he had a slow start after returning from injury, but he's been on fire lately, along with his even strength and power play line mate, Mikko Koivu. We said before that we didn't expect them to match our outputs from last year. Have you changed your mind on that during this amazing run? Like, basically, I'm going to give a throwback to keeping Karlsson last year. How would you rank the Minnesota top 6? I know I asked you this every week last year, though I was usually asking about the Minnesota top 9, but we'll keep it to the top 6 right now. It's like Granlund, Stahl, Koivu, Niederreiter, Zucker, Charlie Coyle. How are you liking all these guys?
Okay. I'll rank them first. I'm going to go Stahl, Granlund, Koivu, Niederreiter, Coyle, Zucker. And like last year, it's still a bit of a mess. Like I still feel pretty strongly about Stahl and Granlund leading the way. Koivu's not that far behind. Niederreiter, Zucker, and Coyle is a bit of a crapshoot depending on who's getting the best deployment of the bunch. If anyone of them happens to be able to work their way onto the top power play unit. It is about time that the Wild started producing. Their current run as a team marks just the second time since the start of the year where they've managed to score 3 or more goals in 3 consecutive contests. I guess maybe I shouldn't say just. That's not totally fair. It's not an easy task to do. But beyond that, they've actually scored 3 or more goals in 6 of their last 7. 2 of those games were 6-goal games to boot. And their top 4 scorers in that span, I'm talking goals specifically, you had Niederreiter with 7 goals, Granlund with 4, Stahl and Zucker with 3 each. The bad news is they scored those goals on a quarter of the shots they took, and it's actually closer to a third of the shots they took if you take Stahl out of the equation, who was really the only one of that bunch shooting at a sustainable shooting percentage. So it's nice to see that this group is still capable of hot runs, but that's what this is. More goals than usual are being scored right now, which of course is adding more chances for everyone else to pick apples. So I don't have any huge change in opinion on these guys and thinking that they're going to be able to repeat these numbers from last year, unless, of course, like last year, they overachieve all season long, which is possible, as we'll talk about when we talk about the Golden Knights this week.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm in a shallow league, and Mikael Granlund had been dropped early on, and I just added him like yesterday or 2 days ago. I'm feeling really good about that. He had 70 points last year. Even if he's only like 60, 65, that's probably, well, I don't know, it'll be borderline worth owning in this league since he doesn't hit or block. Anyway, okay, Brian, let's go now to another outry. Torrey Krug returned for the Bruins. Returned for the Bruins after missing 3 games. No points, 3 shots versus Pittsburgh. He played again today, though, actually, against Edmonton. And it looks like, oh, yeah, 2 assists for Krug.
Yeah, that was a good one.
2 shots, top power play time, everything that you'd expect. Like, you guys know the drill by now. Sell high on McAvoy and his 3 points in his last 4 games, or I guess now 5 games if you can. Like, it's probably too late. He was pointless in 8 before Krug got injured, and he took over on power play 1, got more ice time. So, like, McAvoy is always a good own, as we've seen this year when Krug is down, but not so valuable in fantasy. Maybe he will be one day, but not so valuable in fantasy this year, while Torrey Krug is in the lineup. Not so valuable in fantasy when Torrey Krug is in the lineup. So, yeah, I think next, if Torrey Krug gets injured again and McAvoy goes on a run, you know what to do. Try to trade him to someone who doesn't realize what's going on. Since we're on Boston, Brian, we got to mention. So, Khudobin picked up 2 more wins since the last episode when we were interested in what was going on in the Boston net. Like, it looked like Khudobin had taken the job temporarily. He played a bunch of games in a row, kept winning. He actually had a not so impressive last game. Like, he had a really good 42 save shootout win over New Jersey earlier in the week, and then 4-3 17 save win over Pittsburgh recently. So then I guess that's what prompted the coach to decide, okay, let's put Rask back in. He needs to play. Rask played today and he lost. So, you know, he wasn't terrible. 32 saves. I have 3 goals against, so that works out to like a .914 save percentage, but the Bruins lost, so it'll be interesting to see what they do for their next game. It is against Tampa Bay, so that could be a tough game, and I feel like if I were the Bruins, I'd put in Khudobin because he's the one on the hot streak, and they're going to need to, you know, go with their hottest players if they want to try to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. So yeah, I guess we'll check in next week more. I don't really have a question for you about the Bruins netminders. I feel like whatever you said last week probably still applies, and we'll also bring up the Bruins next week, assuming Marchand returns, and we can finally talk about him in our outreach section. Hasn't happened yet, though, unfortunately.
Rask did not have a terrible showing tonight, and I think he at least made a case that he deserves to be still considered as the default or de facto number 1 goalie until he really blows it. On the flip side, Khudobin's 17 save performance, On the flip side, Khudobin's 17 save performance when he faced 20 shots on goal probably looked worse than it actually was. So we're in an in-between part right now with the Bruins lineup. If you have either of these guys, you probably want to cuff them with the other if you can, and if you need to guarantee yourself some starts.
Yeah, and if Khudobin is a free agent in your league, I still think it's worth adding him because Tuukka Rask, you know, well, we'll see. Like maybe his vacation, just like we've seen before, he didn't, you know, go on the injured reserve or anything, but he definitely took a break from playing games. I wonder if that's going to help him bounce back.
Nobody's injured in the NHL this year. Everyone's just taking vacations.
Yeah, it's a mental health break. But okay, next vacation. Cam Fowler's back from his vacation. He returned to the Ducks on Monday. He has 2 points in 4 games so far. Interestingly, Vatanen and Montour have seemed to hold on to their power play 1 spot along with Perry, Silverberg, and Derek Grant. So we'll get to that soon. This Anaheim team can't avoid injuries. Anyways, let's talk about the D for now first. It looks like the top producing Ducks D-man lately has been Brandon Montour, who had a nice 3-game point streak going before going pointless in his last 2. At this point, Brian, would you be interested in Fowler if he was in your free agency, if he's come back and he's not on the top power play? Or would you wait first for him to get consistent top power play time? And I guess in general, how would you rank the Ducks top 4D? Yes, that was my dog barking. I'm going to stop cutting every time she barks. And sorry to say, my dog is in the room right now. You might hear her bark.
That is Elon's dog, Cody, named after the Chicago Blackhawks' #1 power play defenseman, Cody Franson. But going back to who's on the power play in Anaheim, I'm definitely interested in Cam Fowler, even if he's not up there on the top power play right away. Definitely worth an anticipatory ad. Have to think he'll get back up to his old spot QBing that top unit before long, and that he didn't lose it just because he had to spend some time on the shelf. It's not like he did just leave the team to take a vacation. If you wanted me to rank all of the available Ducks defensemen, and I might be anticipating your question here.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by available. I'm sure like all of them, the top 4, right?
Okay, yeah. Sorry, the most relevant ones. I would still have Montour on top, but then Fowler, then Vatanen, then Lindholm.
That's interesting. You say it's still Montour. I feel like this is a new take that you like Montour above Cam Fowler.
I guess it's still because he's still on the top power play. Like if you're adding for the next 2 days and you know Fowler's going to still be available, I would rather have Montour just until he is officially off that unit. But like I said, I would anticipate that Fowler gets a crack back in his old spot before too long.
Okay, and like I mentioned, the top power play keeps looking sadder and sadder on Anaheim. They were already without Getzlaf, Eves, Kessler. Cachet got up there, but then he got injured. Now Ricard Raquel has an upper body injury and is day-to-day, so who knows how long he'll be out. So yesterday, the Ducks sported a top line of Derek Grant, Corey Perry, and Nick Ritchie. Then, like I said, Derek Grant got some top power play time. We'll see if that lasts. Do any of these Ducks players like Grant or Ritchie interest you at this point if they're going to be getting good deployment? They actually have a nice schedule next week. The Ducks play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, but like with this lineup, it's hard to expect them to score too many goals. But again, like these are guys who might be available and might be top line, top power play guys.
Yeah, sure. They're available and they are technically on the top line, but which of those 3 is really going to drive play to the extent that they produce like a top line? Let's go into each one individually. After Derek Grant's 5-game point streak that we mentioned on the show, he has just 2 goals and no assists on 14 shots in his last 12 games. So just to be clear, 2 points in 12 games, barely averaging more than a shot per game. Nick Ritchie has just 7 points in 20 games on the air. And Corey Perry picked up just about half of his production for the whole season in a run of 5 games in which he had 4 multi-point nights. And like, you can't hold that against the guy. He still has, like, it makes his numbers look good on the whole for the year, but I still don't consider him dependable. If you want to pick one, go with Perry. Keep your expectations low. To be honest, I might be just as interested in Jacob Silverberg right now, playing with Cogliano and Chris Wagner, than I would in at least 2/3 of that quote-unquote top line.
Well, okay. Like, I mean, I assumed that Corey Perry is not available. I was mainly asking you if people should be adding someone who is available like Derek Grant or Nick Ritchie. It sounds like you're saying no.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. So, Brian, since we were talking about the Anaheim defenseman, let's veer off for a second and talk about a former Anaheim defenseman who I'd be curious to know if you think I'm nuts to say I'd want over, I think, all of the Anaheim defensemen, and that is Shea Theodore. We all know about his disappointing start of the season where he like began in the minors and then he finally got called up, but he was getting low minutes and was being healthy scratched. I think we even said on the show, like, I don't know, guys, like you might as well just get rid of Shea Theodore. It doesn't look like it's going to work for him this year. But lately, it looks like things are finally coming together for him over in Vegas. Theodore is now on a 3-game point streak where he's played over 20 minutes a game. He's been on the top power play. So that's 4 points in his last 3 games. 2 of them power play points along with 7 shots. And he's even had a 6-block game versus San Jose. So it'd be really great in your bangers leagues if he can keep that up. Is it time to now pounce on Shea Theodore if he's still available? I feel, Brian, like we got very lucky. We just added him in our joint league, and this is not like a shallow league. There's pretty weak defensemen available, but whoever owned him dropped him a while back. Maybe everyone forgot about him. We just added him now, and I'm really excited to have him. I'd be curious to know who you would prefer between Theodore and the top Anaheim guy, so I guess, and Montour.
Well, you said it about Shea Theodore. We've all been waiting to see his deployment catch up with what our expectations were going into the year. And here we are, getting more than 20 minutes a game, top power play, and he's making the most of it so far. So, yeah, it's pounce time. Knowing, of course, that everything with Theodore is subject to change, as this boost in deployment isn't anything that's been totally established yet. But for now, get him on your team, and I will take him ahead of whichever Anaheim guy. You just need to keep an eye on Shea Theodore and how he's being used so you don't get caught snoozing while Montour or Fowler are doing stuff and available to you. It's entirely possible that Theodore continues in his current deployment, but again, this is the longest we've seen him hold this role. Just need to take that cautionary grain of salt when you are trying to figure out what to expect from him for the next couple weeks. If I did prefer one of the Anaheim guys ahead of him, it would be Fowler, but with him not on the top unit yet, I think I still lean Theodore.
Well, it doesn't even make sense. You just said before that you'd prefer Montour over Fowler.
It's really, okay, you're right, because I am trying to just think about how many more games Montour has on the top unit. And my expectation is that he's going to have one, maybe two, before Fowler gets a turn, but I really have no idea what's going to happen. It's a really big mess, so it's really hard for me to project any of these guys. I will take, and like even Theodore, I was going to say I wanted the certainty from Theodore, but there is none with him yet. There's hopeful certainty. I think I would go with him.
Brian, there's no certainty in life, but I feel like Shea Theodore is probably going to stay on the top power play. Like, there's not too much competition for him compared to on Anaheim. Obviously, he's young. They needed to work him there. Now he's there. He's doing well. Why would they bump him? And also, like I said, on Anaheim, they've been running two defensemen on the top power play, so it can just be Fowler and Montour. Like, in general, is one player, or you can let me know if you just want to move on, but like between Fowler and Montour, since you first said Montour and now you say Fowler, like, let's say they were both on the top power play. Is there one player who you just think is like a better player?
Fowler.
Okay. Well, good to know. And I like Shea Theodore. I think he's in a good spot now, and he's definitely on a more high-scoring team. Like, this Vegas team, I'm done with, like, for now at least, saying that Vegas is like a huge fluke. Like, I don't know if I was actually saying that, but I know that's been a sentiment expressed on the podcast. But like, they're just scoring so many goals every game. Like, okay, so first of all, some sad news over there. David Perron is out with an upper body injury. The dude has 19 points in 21 games. That's a huge bummer for him having such a great season. Hopefully he'll be back soon. But Brian, I want to revisit one guy who I brought up last week. I know we've talked about Vegas a lot, so we won't go into like all these players again, but I want to revisit William Karlsson, since I feel like we kind of brushed by him last week. Like, I asked you about him, then you sort of gave an answer about all the Vegas guys, but like William Karlsson specifically, since we last talked about him, he's put up 6 points in his last 3 games, which brings him up to 22 points in 22 games on the season. Point per game place, Karlsson. Damn. Point per game, base Karlsson. And I'm not talking about Erik Karlsson. I'm talking about William Karlsson on the Vegas Golden Knights. He's playing with an equally red-hot Jonathan Marchessault and also Riley Smith. Did I like ever ask you, like, who is this guy? Like, who is William Karlsson? Where did he come from? And is this production for real, or would you be looking to sell high right now if you owned him?
Well, here's the skinny on William Karlsson, everybody's second favorite Karlsson at the moment, anyway. The second round pick of the Anaheim Ducks back in 2011. He was sent to Columbus as part of a trade when the Ducks acquired James Wisniewski, which was a very memorable deal that made a lot of impact for both teams. Karlsson then picked up 45 points over 2 seasons with Columbus. So that's 15 goals, 30 assists in a baseball season's worth of games. And then, of course, Karlsson was left unprotected by Columbus in the expansion draft, ends up in Vegas, and now has 13 goals on 51 shots, which rams to a 26% shooting success rate. And that means that in 22 games with Vegas, William Karlsson has nearly doubled the number of goals he'd scored in his previous 162 games. But of course, it's not just a hot hand and a high shooting percentage that's getting him there. He's playing with the top line minutes for the first time in his career, and he's also playing with the best line mates he's ever had in Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault. They're somewhat more talented than Matt Calvert, Josh Anderson, Rene Bourque, Gregory Campbell, who he's played with in the past in Columbus. Karlsson's on-ice rate stats have obviously spiked, though there's a much more subtle bump in his individual numbers. So a lot of the offense or the extra offense that's being created while he's on the ice this year is coming from his line mates rather than himself. As you look back at his scouting report from when he was drafted, it says that he's speedy, he's skilled, and can get nifty with offensive moves, and we've seen that, but I'm still not convinced. I mean, I'm getting tired of saying this and being wrong about it, so just consider that when you hear me. I'm not convinced he's going to look more like a 55-point player, so I would be looking to sell him for someone who can get me for sure 60 points or more.
So you're getting sick of saying it, but you're going to say it anyways.
But I'm still going to say it because that's where the data points. Like, you know me, I'm not going to change based on, like, I'm not going to have a whim or a whimsical thought in the last couple of weeks. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to change my whole philosophy and player evaluation and projecting their points. I still have the exact same data that and mindset that I've been working with. So I can't change that, but you can change your response to me sharing that viewpoint on the show.
Right, and you're saying you as in the listener, or you as in me?
Everybody other than me. I'm not going to change what I say, but you can change how you respond to what I say. And the wink, wink, nudge, nudge is like, you ignore me. Ignore me on all my Vegas Golden Knights takes for as long as you want. You deserve that carte blanche by now.
Yeah, well, I guess in general, right? What's the point of this podcast? We're like looking into the numbers. We're trying our best to project what's going to happen. Obviously, no one knows. One of the big tools Brian uses is things like, shooting percentages. And when they're too high, you expect them to come down and like things like that. So fair enough, Brian, I've got to say, and I like totally am not the type of person that knows how to watch hockey and like really appreciate like which team is like really good, as but I will say that I picked up Malcolm Subban in the couple of the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. And so I've been watching a couple of Vegas games. I'm doing some scouting. That's how I watch hockey and play fantasy hockey. I like to watch games of the players who I own. Anyway, Vegas look like a really good team. Like, I don't know how to sort of express this. I'm sure people on Twitter will like flame me now and be like, oh, but I have the possession. I don't know. I didn't check to see like the numbers afterwards, but it just seemed like they were like taking lots of shots and dominating. Like, they look like a really good team. I don't know. I'd be willing to bet you that we'll be seeing them in the playoffs this year. Like, they're just looking like a really good, young, like fast team.
Yeah. You look at their chances to get into the playoffs, and they've positioned themselves really well already. It's not such a bold thing to say that they're going to make it. I mean, even if they've been buoyed by friendly percentages over the first quarter, we have to give them credit. We had a question on our Facebook group that seemed it was a great question. It was, is what the Golden Knights are doing similar to like the way Colorado overperformed under Roy in his first year coaching, I think it was. And no, they're a better team than that Colorado team was. They're not being bailed out as badly by their goalies. They're doing a better job at winning the shot attempt battle. But still, they shouldn't have scored as many goals as they have. And for the first chunk of the season, they shouldn't have stopped as many goals as they did. But they still get to keep all those standing points that they gathered throughout those times where their PDO, which is a number that we sometimes reference to refer to a team's amount of quote-unquote luck or variance in their shooting and save percentages. How am I going to continue this sentence? But to get off that tangent, looking at some playoff projections already, Mika Blake McCurdy, also known as the guy behind HockeyViz.com, he has a playoff prediction model that has Vegas with a 7th best chance to qualify in the West, up at 63%. And yeah, that's ahead of Chicago, Dallas, and Minnesota. Tyler Dello wrote this article where he looked at historically after playing a quarter of the season, how many points you have, and historically what teams with that same number of points have been able to do. And Vegas was the closest team to being a lock in the Pacific. It's not at all projecting like Mika Blake McCurdy's model about how they'll do in future games, just saying, hey, it's getting pretty hard to miss the playoffs if you have this many points so far. All this to say, I would be a fool to count the 4th best team so far this year out of the playoffs. They have a 9-1-0 home record, which is very impressive and does make you wonder if teams are just very excited to visit Vegas. The 3rd best team in the league are the New Jersey Devils. Elon, what do we think? Do we think they're as likely to make the playoffs as the Vegas Golden Knights?
I feel like a lot of people would start thinking that the NHL is just random and we shouldn't even put any stock into what teams are doing well if like Vegas and New Jersey are doing so well. I think a lot of people would say that. I'm not saying I'm saying that. I mean,
But
Jersey.
it's true. It's true. The NHL is a fairly random league. Like the margins of variance can really swing a lot. Over 82 games, you hope it evens out, but these things can happen. And we've seen playoff runs happen or runs to the playoffs, especially where teams who have no business being there still manage to get there.
Yeah, and we'll get to New Jersey in a little bit. Like Taylor Hall is just being so amazing lately. Like it makes sense that they're winning all these games. They have this guy who's like responsible for a couple goals a game just on his own.
Yeah, we will talk about him later in the show. But just to burst the bubble of any Devils fans, they're projected in McCurdy's model at a 43% chance of making the playoffs, despite having almost as many points as Vegas. So for that reason, we can conclude, I guess, that Vegas is a better team than New Jersey on the whole, or at least they're projected to be by this model. And good for them. I don't know what to say anymore about Vegas.
Okay, so let's move on. One more out jury. I'll just say really quickly, Marian Gaborik is back for the Kings. He's been playing on line 3 with Jokinen and a guy named Johnny Brodzinski. But he played on the top power play, and he has an assist and 3 shots in 2 games so far. Is there any value here? Like, should people be looking to add Marian Gaborik? I assume not.
No. Wake me up when Gaborik or any Kings forward not named Carter, Kopitar, Toffoli, or this year Brown sustains anything meaningful for more than a week.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like being on that top power play is a guarantee of anything. Okay, Brian, before we get to our injuries and our line changes and our hot streaks and our cold streaks, let's take a second to thank our sponsor of this week's episode, and those are our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel, Brian, it's pretty fun. Every time you play FanDuel, you get to pick your team from scratch. If you're excited about the Vegas Golden Knights, just grab a bunch of Golden Knights and then you could be happy. Even if you don't have any of them in your actual fantasy teams, you can just grab William Karlsson and Marchessault and James Neal and then cheer like all the fans in Vegas when they keep scoring all of those goals. So yeah, I find FanDuel to be a lot of fun. There's new contests starting every day. You play whenever you want. There's something for everyone. Lots of contests to choose from, starting at just $1, going up to, I don't know, like $1 million. I've never looked how high these contests go, but I know they start at $1. You just pick a contest, choose your team, watch your score real time. Brian, we've been running this Keeping Karlsson FanDuel League for a few weeks now, and I've been complaining on the show every single week about how I'm getting destroyed. But this week is different because, no, I didn't win, but I did come in 5th place, which got me in the money spot. My $2 turned into $4, so woohoo for me. But more excitingly is the fact that I didn't do so terribly. I'm pretty happy about it, but I feel like I could still do better. I took Tarasenko. Like St. Louis beat Edmonton 8-3, and I had a couple of guys there. I had Tarasenko and I had Braden Shen. So now I wish I just picked more St. Louis guys. The team that won had Tarasenko and Shen and Jaden Schwartz. I feel like that's what you got to do. He also had Jake Allen, so that obviously helps. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to beating all of you, including the winner from last week, Go Habs Go 21. You are going down this Tuesday. So if you want to play, go to fanduel.com/KARL. We have our contest every Tuesday, and you could sign up for it on Monday night. Probably by the time you hear this podcast, it'll be time to sign up. So again, go to keepingkarlsson.com/FanDuel or fanduel.com/KARL. They both will take you to the same place, and let's see if you can take me down. Reigning 5th place champion, what's the word? I'm not the champion, but I'm in the, I was in the top 5, baby.
Congratulations. That's something to be proud of. Better than me last week. I'll give you that. I was really hoping. I don't know. I'll never learn. I make my weekly mistake of thinking that somebody against Vancouver is going to do well. I did well on the forward side of that, but I also had Michael Neuwirth thinking that at home against Vancouver, he's going to be able to handle his business. He did not. If you do want to join us this week, again, that's great. If you're new, you can get free entry also into the NHL Breakaway with thousands of dollars in cash prizes guaranteed to pay out when you make your first deposit on FanDuel. Just visit fanduel.com and sign up with the promo code Karl. That's fanduel.com, promo code KARL. And please remember, as we learned with one of our patrons this week, that this contest is void where prohibited.
As is a lot of things in life are void where prohibited. You got to read and see if what you're doing is prohibited. Okay, Brian, let's go to injuries. This is like not even a funny running joke. I don't even know what we're doing. Let's kill the void where prohibited joke. I haven't heard one person ever say that they like that. Okay, injuries time. Let's jump to some injuries. Let's start with one that hasn't actually caused the player to miss time, but maybe a player that's needed to take a vacation, and maybe this explains his slow start. News came out last Sunday that Joe Pavelski has been playing hurt lately with an undisclosed injury. So here's a quote from Coach Pete DeBoer. Joe's playing at not 100%, and I'll be honest, a lot of guys maybe even wouldn't be out there dealing with what he's dealing with. So obviously, Coach Pete, very proud of Joe Pavelski playing through his ailment, but you know who's not proud of him? His fantasy owners, because he was doing nothing for them. I'm sure they would have rather just had him in the IR and have him heal and get someone who's going to get some points out of free agency. Anyways, funny enough, since the news has come out, Pavelski is on a 3-game point streak. He's had an assist in each of his last 3 games, so maybe this only got announced as the injury was almost healed. So, Brian, I don't know what to make of this. Like, if Pavelski is injured, is this good news as it explains why he's been so ineffective on the score sheet, and now we can finally expect him to do better moving forward because hopefully he's not injured anymore? Or is this bad news because you're finding out your player's injured and maybe he'll just continue to be bad? Like, if you were a Pavelski owner, how do you take this news?
You don't take it so well. We'd speculated that maybe he was playing injured because there didn't seem to be much other explanation for why he hasn't looked right and why his points production has accordingly not looked right. I may try, if I'm a Joe Pavelski owner, which I'm not, but if I were, I may try and sell while he's on the upswing because I drafted a 100% Joe Pavelski. If he's not going to sit, take a vacation, let this injury heal, then I'm not as happy to carry an 80% Joe Pavelski all season long if I can help it.
Okay, and by the way, Pavelski isn't only the Shark. Okay, so yeah, and by the way, Pavelski isn't the only Shark waking up, so I'm curious if you'll have the same advice for people who own Brent Burns and Joe Thornton. Brent Burns has a 3-game point streak himself, as does Joe Thornton, so like, I guess I would ask, like, are the sad times over? All of them were on such cold streaks, and now finally in the last 3 games, they've been getting points. Is this a mirage or a sign of things to come finally for all these Sharks?
I expect good things from both. I expect good things to keep coming from both Brent Burns and Joe Thornton. Of course, if Joe Pavelski is at 80%, that does hurt them a little. But the Sharks as a whole, they haven't been getting credit, or at least the credit that they deserve for their efforts. Going into tonight's matchups, they ranked 8th in the league in expected goals for per 60 minutes, but their actual goals for per 60 minutes puts them down at 29th out of 31 teams. That's a 21 rank difference. Even if you don't want to buy completely into expected goals being an accurate way to measure a team's efforts, that's still a massive gap, and the Sharks have deserved better. From a simpler perspective that you'll probably agree with more easily, San Jose ranks 30th in the league in even strength shooting percentage, down below 6%. That'll go up, and Burns, Thornton, Pavelski will benefit as well, and hey, maybe even Thomas Hertl.
Yeah, Hertl was getting some top power play time. I don't think he got it last game. So you got to check the deployment there. I know for sure Hertl's been playing on a line with Logan Couture, so that's good. Couture and like Bodker or whoever. Anyway, okay, Brian, another injury. Kyle Palmieri is out again. Broke his foot on Monday. Will be out 4 to 6 weeks. The guy cannot catch a break. He already was injured earlier in the year. You know who else can't catch a break? Me. His fantasy owner who keeps struggling with his injury. And I was just thinking to myself at the start of the week, man, I really need to pick up a right wing because I don't have that many. Then Palmieri went down. We'll get to Dadonov later. He went down too. Very sad. But anyways, you guys don't care about me. You care about Kyle Palmieri and the New Jersey Devils. And you know, once player who is catching a break with Kyle Palmieri getting injured might be Jesper Bratt, as he's been getting line 1 and power play 1 time with Taylor Hall, though this time hasn't been as rosy as before. He scored a goal on Wednesday, but hasn't put up a point in the 2 games since. So, like, if you recall, like before, Jesper Bratt, when Palmieri was injured, was on that top line and top power play and just killing it. But still, like, he might be worth looking at. I think he probably is, playing with someone as great as Taylor Hall has been lately. Yesterday, it seems like the Hall, Bratt, Hischier line got broken up at some point, and Hall switched to play with Boyle and Wood. So that's something to watch for tomorrow at the morning skate before maybe jumping on Jesper Bratt. If you have a little bit of time, maybe check those line combos tomorrow morning. But yeah, assuming Bratt is skating with Hall and Hischier, would you... You know what? I'm saying Hischier incorrectly. I was corrected many times in the Facebook group. What is it? Hischier? Hischier? I think it's Hischier.
Going into the season, we had Hischier. Cody thinks it's
Okay, so you say from going into the season again? And I just want to.
Or were you gonna keep all that?
No, I'm not. Just go back from.
I don't think it's fun to talk about pronunciations.
Oh, should I just take it all out?
Yeah.
All
Just
right.
go
So
with it.
then.
You're fine. You're great.
No. So then I'll say that. I'll say that line again. Did I hit the thing? Oh man, I hope I've been hitting this thing. Okay. All right. What was I saying? So assuming Brad is skating with Hall and Hischer, would you be rushing to add him? Is that what I asked? I forget where I was.
Don't know.
Okay, I'll go a line earlier. Okay, sorry everyone in the chat room. Thanks for sticking with us. Sorry. Okay. Yesterday, it seems like the Hall, Brad, and Hischer line got broken up at some point. Hall switched to play with Boyle and Wood, so that's something to watch for tomorrow at the morning skate. Maybe if you have some time before you have to rush to add Jesper Bratt, you could wait and just see like what the line combos are looking like going into tomorrow's game. But Brian, assuming Bratt is playing with Hall and Hischer, would you be rushing to add him? I feel like it's hard to forget his amazing run in that spot last time Palmieri was out. I wouldn't put too much stock in these last two games, right?
Yeah, I don't know if rushing is the word, but I would certainly be interested. During the last stretch that Palmieri was out, it was a 6-game stretch. Bratt had 2 goals, 4 assists, and 3 power play points in those 6 games. And anyone playing with Taylor Hall is going to be playing with one of this year's best forwards on top of that. I didn't mean to say on top of that. And anyone playing with Taylor Hall is getting to play with one of this year's best forwards in the NHL. So that's another plus.
Yeah, okay. But Brian, another option might be to jump on Adam Henrique. He's been playing on the second line, I guess, with Stafford and Zajac, as well as on the top power play. And he has 5 points in his last 4 games, mostly from a 1-goal, 2-assist game versus Minnesota on Monday. Curious to know, who would you take between Henrique and Jesper Bratt right now?
I think I would take Bratt. Henrique has just been so up and down. It's been a long time since we've seen real consistent production from him. He did have 6 points in 6 games to start the season, get everyone's attention. Then he had 3 points in his next 13 games, and now he's on a run again. I think it's helpful to him that Travis Zajac is back and that they're playing together, and that makes him worth considering as a stream, as he was like all of last year, and he was really hit or miss as that stream, but I'm not rushing to add him or as interested in adding him as I am Jesper Bratt.
Yeah, that's fair. Might as well take a bigger swing. Brian, since we're here on New Jersey, do we need to make a bit of an about face from when we said that Will Butcher wouldn't be able to keep his great run from the start of the season up? Butcher, he now has 5 points in his last 5 games, 2 on the power plays, up to 18 points in 23 games on the season. So yeah, he started. This is like the opposite of Pacioretty, right? Who started weak. We said, hold on. Then he went strong. Then he got weak again. Butcher's done the opposite. He started strong, went weak for a little bit, but now he's on another hot streak. Curious, what are your thoughts right now on Will Butcher? What kind of point pace are you expecting from him moving forward for the rest of the year? He seems to be locked in as a top power play defenseman on this New Jersey team.
And that gives him some cachet for sure. He did just come off a stretch of 12 games in which he had just 4 points. 3 of them were on the power play, so just 1 point at even strength for Will Butcher. But no doubt he's cashing in again lately. He's in that power play 1 spot, so he's worth a roster spot. For the optimists who really want to believe in him, 4 of the 5 points on his most recent run have been primary points. For the pessimists, he's not going to score twice every 5 games as he has over the last 5 games when he's averaging fewer than 2 shots per game. So I think over the rest of the season, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to be considered stingy here. I'm going to give him a 40-point pace the rest of the way. I know it doesn't sound very nice, but it's the best I can do. Maybe 45, but I think I'm also penalizing him a bit because I'm keeping in mind that he's giving so little in peripherals also during that cold streak. As we talked about on the show, he was doing nothing for your lineup.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess if you're not he's got to get some of that Charlie Coyle juju before you're going to give him any more than 40 to 45 points. Okay, Brian, and since we've been talking about him, let's just mention Taylor Hall. So amazing. A goal and 2 assists versus Vancouver on Friday, a goal and an assist yesterday at Detroit. He's up to 26 points in 23 games on the season, 81 shots. You could just drool over these Taylor Hall numbers. I really don't see any reason why he shouldn't be able to hit 70 points this year. Do you concur?
Love it. It's about time that Taylor Hall has a full, consistent, fantastic, knock on wood, healthy season. This could be the one. And if it is, 70 points for sure.
Okay, so let's go to Pittsburgh. I'll just mention quickly, Malkin has missed a few games with an upper body injury. There was a chance he'd return yesterday, and then he didn't in the end. So that must mean he'll be back soon, right? I mean, you never know with Evgeny Malkin. Normally, I wouldn't bring this up, like an injury that might be over, but Malkin is like the type of player who you always have to get nervous about once he's injured. But anyway, in his absence, the Pens have been rolling the top six of Crosby, Hornqvist, and Sheary, and then Gensel, Kessel, and Riley Sheehan. And Sheehan actually came from Detroit earlier in the season. I didn't even mention it on the podcast. I thought this is not nothing. This is peanuts. No one will care. But actually, Riley Sheehan has 5 points in his last 6 games. I imagine he won't keep this up and he'll just get bumped once Malkin is back. But while Malkin is injured, this is a pretty good spot for Riley Sheehan, right? Maybe worth a look.
Yeah, it is a good spot for Riley Sheehan. Although remember, he is Riley Sheehan who went 79 games without a goal last season before potting 2 in the final game of the season when he was still a Detroit Red Wing. He's already halfway there to that total with 1 goal. Look, he's not going to keep up this sort of production. The best he can do with this mini run is get his name penciled in on that list with Brian Rust, Patrick Hornqvist, Connor Sheary, Jake Gensel as someone who gets a space in Pittsburgh's top 6 revolving door. But even that's optimistic.
Okay, so yeah, just someone to keep in mind. Let's just take a look at the rest of this top 6 lately. Crosby, of course, he has 9 points in his last 6 games. No surprise that he's bounced back like we said he would. We weren't geniuses for saying it. Phil Kessel's also on a great run of 9 points in his last 6. Patrick Hornqvist is someone interesting. Like, he was dropped in a couple of my leagues and I snagged him in both, and I've been very happy with that decision. He has 6 points in his last 6 games, 26 shots in that span, 19 hits, again in 6 games. So thank you very much to the people who dropped Patrick Hornqvist. You know, he's playing right now on a line with Crosby, who's hot. He's on the top power play most of the time. I don't see a reason why he can't bounce back to being the, 50, 55-point guy that we expected him to be going into last season if he sticks with Sidney Crosby.
I agree.
Okay. And after we mentioned that Letang was losing some power play time to Schultz last week or the week before, he's been doing just fine. Like, Letang is on the top unit. We probably should have even said, like, don't even worry about it. Letang will just always be. Maybe we did say that. But yeah, Schultz has been on and off the top power play, but is on a nice run himself of 3 points in the last 2 games. He had 2 power play assists yesterday on the top power play with Letang, Kessel, Hornqvist, and Crosby. Though keep in mind that once Malkin comes back, he'll be on the top power play. So maybe Justin Schultz will lose that spot. Or I guess you could be nervous and say that Letang will lose that spot sometime. I wouldn't be too worried about that. But anyway, just to say, if you're excited about Schultz's current run, keep that in mind that he might get bumped off that top power play. And yeah, Chris Letang doing fine for now. Malkin got injured. So far, Letang is fine and healthy. Hopefully, at least he'll keep it up, and hopefully Malkin will be back soon. Brian, another injury that we have to bring up. Let's go to Florida. I hate this. We just found this out today. News came out earlier today that Evgeny Dadonov is out with a shoulder injury, and it could be an extended absence. That's the quote. Oh no, this is like, he was doing really well, and he actually had a bit of a cold stretch, and I was going to bring him up on the show and be like, oh, is there something wrong with Evgeny Dadonov? And I was excited to be like, no, he's fine. You know, people go on cold streaks. We still on the top line, top power play. Well, not anymore. Not if he's going to have an extended absence. By the way, this is after the Panthers already lost Radim Verbata earlier in the week with an upper body injury. He got a puck to the face. So this is bad news for the Panthers. Worse news for all of the members of hashtag Team Dadonov. Brian, do we now have to jump on hashtag Team Sevier as Colton Sevier was practicing on line 1 with Huberdeau and Barkov today? It looks like he's going to, at least for the game 1 of Florida without Dadonov, he'll be on that line. So like, yeah. Shut up, Cody. God damn it.
Don't forget to hit the thing.
Yeah, okay. No word yet on who will take Dadonov's top power play spot. So it could be Sevier, but it could also be someone like Nick Bjugstad, who took Verbata's spot on line 2 with Trocheck and Jamie McGinn earlier in the week. So yeah, Brian, I guess here's my question to you. Are you rushing to add Colton Sevier, or would you rush to add someone like Bjugstad, who might get on the top power play? Like, what's your take on what to do now if you have Dadonov and you have to fill that spot?
What you do is you watch the Florida Panthers beat writers and line combinations before games and in practices very, very closely. Honestly, there's such a fall off after the top line in Florida that it's not at all obvious. Like, nobody seems like they're an obvious choice to take a turn on line 1. And so everyone's got a shot to step into Dadonov's spot. Colton Sevier, Nick Bjugstad, Henrik Haapala, Jamie McGinn. I also have no idea if it's going to be a single guy who gets a long turn or if the Panthers are going to whip through a whole bunch of different combos. Who knows? Could Barkov and Huberdeau get split up? This is uncharted territory here, and the Panthers really have precious little to work with to keep their lineup competitive. And like to consider just how they're going to get scoring from any other line. Sorry. How they're going to replace, how they're going to keep things going with what they've got, which was a line one that was clicking and a line two that is driven hard by Vincent Trocheck. So if I had to guess, I mean, I would take Sevier because he's the one who's been mentioned, and Bjugstad ahead of the rest of the pack. But I really don't know, Elon. It's somebody like, I'm the guy who sort of sits back and waits to see what happens. And usually I miss the boat because I'm not willing to burn a move to jump on somebody who's like 40% of a sure thing. So how quick are you going to be to rush out and add any one of these guys? As someone who owns Dadonov in your leagues, I own him in mine, but I don't know that I'm going to rush out for a replacement if I don't know who it's going to be or how he's going to be used.
Well, I feel like Colton Sevier, they've said he was practicing on line one. So that's a pretty good spot. I feel like go grab Colton Sevier. Kind of sucks I do this podcast and my opponents in the couple are hearing me and maybe I'll have to bid some money to get Colton Sevier. But yeah, he's someone who I would be looking at since he'll be on that line with Barkov and Huberdeau, and they're so good to play with. I should mention, Bjugstad has actually been having an okay season. He has 10 points in 22 games, so almost half point per game, taking a lot of shots lately. 4 yesterday versus Chicago, 5 versus Toronto. So with these injuries, he's getting an increased role and doing pretty well with it. Okay, there's, like you said, Henrik Haapala. He was called up recently. He has 1 assist in 2 games, but he's been playing in the bottom 6, so I'd wait to see. He has no shots also in those 2 games, so I'd definitely wait to see something happen with him before rushing to add him. Sad situation for the Panthers, sad situation for Dadonov owners, of course. Okay, next injury. Ryan McDonough has been out with an abdominal injury for the Rangers. He's missed 3 games now. Tough break for him. He was doing pretty well, even after his demotion to the second power play going into the season. McDonough has 12 points in 21 games on the year. That's a 47-point pace. That would be amazing if he could keep that up. But now he's injured, so we'll worry about that later. Is there anyone on the Rangers who you'd be considering to add in McDonough's absence? It looks like Nick Holden, Brendan Smith, and Brady Shea have all gotten some power play 2 time recently. Shea has actually been okay lately. He had 2 assists versus Detroit on Friday, 1 assist the game before versus Cal. 1 assist the game before versus Carolina, nothing today versus Vancouver. So I feel like Brady Shea is probably the next best defenseman on the Rangers if you want one, or maybe you just don't want any of them.
Can you hear sirens?
I can.
Okay, so I'll just wait for them to pass.
Ugh.
I mean, I hope everyone's okay.
How's everybody? Oh, you mean like the people with the sirens?
Yeah.
It's just like a cat caught in a tree. Don't worry about it. I hope. Do you think that every time like you hear sirens?
No.
I can imagine you being like that, just like totally paralyzed. That's why you're usually a couple minutes late to start the podcast. You're fretting about the various sirens that go by.
No, it was just to contrast your personal annoyance with the sirens.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's the usual cast of characters in New York for the Rangers specifically that you would expect to step up in case someone gets demoted or injured. Of the group, I think you've got it. Brady Shea has the most upside, so maybe you could grab him, but you probably can find more value elsewhere on your wire. Maybe I shouldn't say probably. Just have a look, make sure first, and then you can go ahead and grab Brady Shea.
Okay, and it's worth mentioning that the Rangers have changed up their forward lines recently. Today they ran with Zibanejad, Kreider, Buchnevich, and then Zuccarello, JT Miller, and Grabner, and then Nash, Hayes, and Jesper Fast. So that's not great news. But that's not great news for Rick Nash, who's been bumped from the top 6 to the bottom 6, and also Nash was already not on the top power play, right? So he's still on power play 2, but no longer playing with Zuccarello. I was really liking Rick Nash going to the year. I thought he was like this really smart sleeper who most people didn't draft, and he was taking so many shots, and he was on this like pretty decent line. But yeah, lately he hasn't been so good. He actually assisted on a Jimmy Vesey goal today, but that's his only 2nd point in his last 5 games. He's only been taking 1 or 2 shots in these last 5 games, which is really disappointing. He was like at 3-4 shots a game before this stretch. I don't know if there's something like wrong with him. Maybe he needs to take a vacation. But yeah, with the Rangers only playing twice next week, is Nash like a snoozer at this point? Or should people still be holding on to him, hoping he can get back in the top 6 and get his shots back up?
He might be a snoozer for the moment. His average time on ice is down by about a minute over the last handful of games compared to the first bunch of games. And that's bad news for someone who we've looked to as a volume guy this year. To be a volume guy, you need to get the volume minutes. And that's why I think Rick Nash seems like a pretty safe guy to drop right now, who won't, just jump onto your opponent's radar. I don't think anyone else in your league is going to be rushing to make a play for him. And then you can just try to be quick on the trigger if and when we see his deployment improve again, because he has proven himself worthwhile when he is getting the minutes and playing in a better spot in the lineup.
Okay, so yeah, maybe moving forward, like for next week or something, I'll take a look and see if we can find anything on Twitter. Like, tweet at us if you've heard anything. Like, why is Rick Nash getting demoted? Was the coach mad at him? Or did he just want to give JT Miller more of an opportunity to do something or just shake things up? Anyways, of course, since we're on the Rangers, we have to talk about Henrik Lundqvist, who's on a really great run. 4 straight wins, 5 straight quality starts, including 3 of them where he had like 0 or 1 goal against. So like Henrik Lundqvist, he's really on this nice run, and I feel like this is the first time in a while that we've seen him on like a really good run in a while. We've been talking about how he's so up and down, like a couple good games and a couple bad games, but here we are. He's back on a really good hot streak. Do you expect him to keep it up, or are you expecting him to flame out for a couple of games soon enough?
So got to give him some credit. Henrik Lundqvist is a top 10 goalie this year in even strength delta save percentage, which is the difference between a goalie's actual and expected save percentages as calculated over on Corsica.hockey. That's a good thing in brief, simple terms. Now, this isn't usually my style, but Lundqvist also does kind of seem like the type of guy who can keep rolling on momentum once he can get dialed in for a long enough time, which it seems like he's doing. But keep in mind that over the last couple of years, Lundqvist has rarely been able to string together 2 or 3 consecutive good starts, let alone 4. And heading into this run, Lundqvist's quality start numbers were abysmal. Just 7 quality starts in 16 tries, amounting to a rounded 44% quality start percentage. Anything under 50 is bad. Anything that far under 50 is pretty bad. So yeah, I'm not totally sold that Lundqvist is going to keep this up in a consistent way. If you own him in a keeper league, this could be your last chance to sell him for good value. I would be trying to take advantage if I can afford to send him away.
Yeah, good point for sure. I'd be curious to know what people can get for him after this really strong run. Of course, there's his former backup goalie, Antti Ranta, who's injured again. Another guy who's having really bad luck this year, just like Palmieri. Upper body injury. We don't know how long he'll be out. It's too bad. Like, he finally put together a couple good games in a row. It seemed like he was helping the Coyotes get back on track as they were on a 3-game winning streak before he went down in the 3-1 loss to San Jose. So yeah, I'm pretty bummed. I had owned Ranta in one league, and I was excited to finally see him doing something, and then he went down with injury. But that's how it goes. Now Scott Wedgwood is the starter, and he had a decent start, stopping 23 of 25 shots in the 3-2 win over LA on Friday. But then yesterday he got blown up by, of course, the Vegas Golden Knights. He was actually looking okay, like no goals against in the first period, then 3 quick goals against in the second, and then he got pulled, and that was it for Scott Wedgwood for the night. Marek Langenhammer came in and actually stopped 10 out of the 10 remaining shots that the Coyotes face. So I'd be curious to know, Brian, who do you think the Coyotes will go with on Tuesday at Edmonton? Do you just keep going with Langhammer or Langenhammer? I don't know. Anyways, whatever. It's crazy that we have to even talk about this guy on the podcast, but that's the situation right now on Arizona. Do you think they go with him since he hasn't led in a goal yet since he's been called up, or do you go back to Wedgwood, who's supposed to be their number 1 with Ranta out?
My guess is that they go to Wedgwood, although obviously I have no inside info. My thought process is this. The Coyotes flipped a 5th rounder to New Jersey to acquire Wedgwood, and they waived Domingue to make room. So I'm guessing they'd like to see more of what he offers exactly. Langhammer, meanwhile, has been bumping around the Coyotes organization since 2015-16, spending time in the ECHL and AHL mostly. And that's why I think I would give Wedgwood a shot. There's a chance he's good, by the way, but that's also a function of him not having played enough games for us to really know. But I have not ruled him out as being a league average goalie.
Okay, so I guess what I should have asked, kind of a very narrow question, just being like, who's going to start on Tuesday? Overall, Wedgwood is someone who you would potentially take a flyer on if you're in a deep enough league where most starting or all starting goalies are owned. Then you would jump on Wedgwood and hope, or is he the type of player that it's like you add him and then he's just going to potentially ruin your save percentage because you don't know much about him?
If you were rolling with Ranta, I would give Wedgwood a shot. Not to say that I think he's going to be quite as good as Ranta. I don't know. But there's enough upside there. For some reason, I think so. I cannot quantify or justify my position entirely.
Okay, yeah. On the mailbag show, the patron mailbag show last week, which, by the way, people got our takes on Ranta's injury even more quickly because they get that bonus content. And you can check out how to get the bonus content at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. Anyways, you were like very high on Wedgwood. Now it seems like you're a little bit more tempered, which makes sense since you did
Well,
just get pulled.
I'm just on the mailbag show. I feel like I can. This is where I need that evidence to really back me up. The mailbag show is where we let loose a little bit and give a little bit more of our opinions. And I just don't have any real hard evidence to back up my opinions on Wedgwood. It's just a hunch based on what I've seen from him, some numbers I've picked up, and well, whatever hunches come from.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Hey, your hunches have gotten you to many fantasy hockey wins in the past when you've had to act quickly. By the way, one big difference between the mailbag show and the regular show is that on the regular show, I generally drink a Red Bull, which I did today, which is helping me talk so quickly. While on the mailbag show last week, I drank a beer and I was a little bit more loose. So you could hear two different sides of me if you're curious. keepingkarlsson.com/patron. I don't know if that is actually an advertisement or not. Anyway, since we're on Arizona, other sad Arizona news. Clayton Keller has been ice cold lately. He only has 3 assists in his last 10 games, only 20 shots in that span. So it's only 2 shots a game. Far cry from the huge point in shot paces he was putting on before this cold stretch. Looks like also Keller is off the Stepan line. Like at the start of the year, we were seeing Keller, Stepan, and Domi. And it was like, oh, that looks really good. Now all 3 of them have been on different lines. Yesterday they went with Keller, Fisher, and Richardson. Stepan with Tobias Ryder and Brendan Perlini, and then Domi with Duclair and Dvorak. So really spreading around these guys and a whole bunch of names there. I feel like we've mentioned almost all these people at some points that they've gone hot and cold throughout the years on Arizona, but overall it doesn't look like a very deep lineup. What do you do with Clayton Keller, like specifically in a 1-year league right now? Like we know he has great upside, but like I said, 3 points in his last 10 games and he's playing on a line. I'll repeat that with Christian Fischer and Brad Richardson. So he's not playing with great players. I think he's still on the top power play. So that's something. He was actually dropped in the Cupful recently, which is a 1-year league, and it caused quite a stir. Like people were like, oh my God, like why would this person drop him? Maybe this patron knew what he was doing. Like, what do you think moving forward for Clayton Keller this year?
If you have him, and I do in one of my leagues that even has a sort of shallow player pool, like Gensel is available to me right now, and I'm considering the switch, but I have limited moves. So that's why I think I'm going to hold Clayton Keller. I don't know what else you can really do. He's probably really important. I don't know what else you can do. He was probably a really important part of early season success for you, or a big contributor to your team's stats on the whole. And yeah, like he sure does seem more droppable than he did a week ago, but we also had to know regression was going to come into play eventually for Keller, who had been producing at an 87-point pace a month into the season. Now he's down to a much more reasonable 63-point pace, which still could be a touch high. So regression is how I'm going to answer this question. I'd say bear with him if you can, and if there aren't any obvious free agent ads in the meantime, hang on.
Brian, I don't know. That was kind of like a non-answer. Like what's gonna happen with him moving forward? Like I said, it's not just regression. Like his shots are down. Like why is he taking fewer shots? Like he's on this worst line. Like it seems to me like he's looking like someone who's not going to be able to put up those points he put up before unless he could increase his shots and play with better players. Like let's say for people who aren't in leagues with limited moves, in that case, do you think he's droppable, or do you expect him to stay at this like 63-point pace at least?
You're really holding my feet to the fire here, huh? Look, I don't know how he's going to be deployed the rest of the year. I still consider him to be one of the top 3 most talented players in Arizona, so I expect him to get commensurate deployment, which is why I think everything's going to be okay. He's obviously getting less shots because he's playing fewer minutes. He's not getting the best opportunities that he was to start the year. I think he'll get back to them. What's Arizona's choice otherwise?
I don't know, they could just keep losing, or they could get, like the strange thing is Derek Stepan, who had been hugely disappointing back when Keller was killing it. Now like Stepan is doing great. They've like flipped. Stepan had 2 assists yesterday versus Vegas. He's now on a 6-game point streak with 1 goal and 5 assists in that span. He's now up to 15 points in 26 games on the season compared to Keller's 20 points. I'm curious to know, like, who do you think will end up with more points come year end? I know you don't want to answer these Clayton Keller questions, but like, who do you like better moving forward between Stepan and Keller? Like, would you drop Keller for Stepan if you can make that move and like you didn't have to worry about position considerations?
I don't know. I really don't. I'm sorry. I don't have a hot Clayton Keller take this week. I think I'll go Stepan, but if I had to guess, I would also say that Keller and Stepan's fortunes are going to be more intertwined the rest of the way than they've appeared to be so far. So there might not be enough distance between them for there to be a distance on the score sheet. But again, just guessing, Arizona has really juggled lines a lot this year, and there has not been a lot of consistency. So it's really hard to gauge what the rest of the season looks like. I still believe that Stepan, Keller, and Domi will be 1, 2, 3 in points. Of course, deployment is going to be a part of who actually ends up in what spot.
Okay, I'll let this go for now, but I think we might have to bring up Clayton Keller again next week if he continues on this cold streak, because his owners, I don't know, I'm one of them actually in one league also, in a league that I have the moves, but I also really enjoyed his production earlier on, so I'm willing to give him more time. So my answer would be to also hold on to him, but like, it's getting, like this lower number of shots is what bothers me. Like the 3 points in 10 games, stuff like that happens. These shots and these line mates, I don't like that. But okay, Brian, you said, by the way, 1, 2, 3. Of course, you're only talking about forwards, because if you weren't, then you'd probably also be including Oliver Ekman-Larsson in this discussion of top Arizona guys. He's the one who's been great, like pretty much all year round, and he's like doing really, really well this year. He's on a 5-game point streak, and he's up to 17 points in 26 games on the season, which is good for a 54-point pace if he could keep it up. Do you think that Oliver Ekman-Larsson is overperforming, or is his production sustainable? Like going into the season, I recall you being pretty confident that he would only be like a 45-point guy. That's what he's been for most years, except for that 1 year when he had that really good season and was closer to 55. Right now, he's closer to that 55 again. Has his production been sustainable, or do you think he's going to go back down soon?
Well, I'm actually going to walk back what I just said about the top 3 Arizona scorers and say OEL has a chance to be one of them. I'm looking to find a spot where Ekman-Larsson is enjoying an inordinate amount of variance that's boosting his numbers, and I honestly can't really. His IPP is about 10 points high, and that should be enough to put him back below a 50-point pace, but he is looking more than the 45-point player he's appeared to be over his career to date. And yes, I have staked my name to him being a 45-point player, but so far this year, looking better. The best part of all this, by the way, is that his shots are back. He's on pace for 227, which isn't up there with Ekman-Larsson's highest highs, but is still up there nonetheless for a defenseman, and of course blows last year's 145 shots out of the water. That paltry mark, he's actually already halfway to that, to beating last year's full season shot on goal mark already. So good for Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
Yeah, the thing is, we have to remember, last year he had that hand injury apparently for like the whole season. So it makes sense why he wasn't taking as many shots. And now it makes sense after his nice vacation over the summer. Brian, I think we've got, like, I think one of the words in the episode title this week should be vacation. I'm sure you could come, oh, Vegas vacation? I don't know. I'm throwing things out here. But yeah, Oliver Ekman-Larsson had that break. His hand seems to be better. He's doing great. Seems to me like he's closer to 55 than 45 this year, if I had to bet on it. Okay, let's...
No, just to be clear, I'm going to cut in because we did anticipate the shots would come back. This is just announcing that they are back. I didn't think the shots coming back was the key to him being a 50-point player or 55-point player. I guess I'm just reminding everybody that I am wrong, or I'm changing my mind on Oliver Ekman-Larsson based on what we've seen so far this year being different enough from what we've seen in the last, well, his whole career.
Yeah, and obviously the fact that he's getting these points, even when Arizona, they're not blowing the league out of the water with all of their goals. So if he's able to get all these points, even while Arizona doesn't score very much, then that must mean that it's likely that he'll be able to somewhat keep it up, at least. Okay, so Brian, we're out of injuries. We're out of outjuries. I'm going to get to a roster moves section of the show, but I've only got one to report. But Calgary waived Eddie Lack. He went unclaimed, of course, and they called up another goalie named David Rittich, who played his first game yesterday, and he got the win over Colorado. He's up 24 of 26 shots. It was a good game for David Rittich. So, Brian, I guess my classic question, who's David Rittich? Like, what do you know about this guy? Is he a highly touted prospect, someone that we're excited about for the future for the Calgary Flames? Or is he just like some guy that had a good game, but you wouldn't expect too much from him? Like I said last week, Mike Smith has been great overall in the year. He has 922 save percentage, but I'd be surprised if he could stay healthy all year long. So hopefully now that the Flames aren't rostering a guaranteed loss guy like Eddie Lack, they'll be able to, rest Mike Smith a little bit more often without risking like just losing those games. So maybe Rittich will get some more games than Eddie Lack was getting. I'm curious to know, like, how high up the backup rankings would you rank David Rittich at this point as the backup on the Flames?
Yeah, he'd be a reasonable choice as a backup goalie. The undrafted 24-year-old Czech netminder had been 5-1 this year in the AHL, posting a 931 save percentage before the call-up. Rittich also had a successful first pro season last year, going 15-11-1 with a 924 save percentage. So why not give him a shot? I don't know if his presence means Smith sits more often. Like, he's still pretty untested. Oh, completely untested at the NHL level, save for the one game he has under his belt now. But the Flames weren't seeming to get the number of games out of Eddie Lack that they'd hoped for. So maybe Smith can now rest once every 4 games or so. Or at the very least, if he's hurt, they can feel, well, I don't know if they should feel more, they probably should feel more confident with anyone other than Eddie Lack, especially since Rittich has seen success in the AHL. If I were to rank him amongst the backups, well, who isn't a backup? Well, who is and isn't a backup is a blurry proposition to figure out where that line is. The guy that I sort of have him aligned with right now is Korpisalo, someone who's on a pretty good team who can step in and do a good job, although we're still not 100% sure exactly how each start is going to look.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. Definitely, I think, keep your trigger finger on Rittich. Like, also, Mike Smith is known to get injured every once in a while, so he might get injured at some point. And like you said, at that point, make sure to add Rittich. I wouldn't have said that about Eddie Lack, but he's gone unclaimed. Unlike Niemi, I guess all these teams that were so excited to claim Niemi, they're not as excited to claim Eddie Lack. To be fair, Niemi has had a better career overall. Anyways, Brian, okay, let's go into line combinations. Now, I want to talk about some players whose position has changed in their respective lineups. And I want to start in Winnipeg. Jacob Trouba, I just realized recently, he's no longer the power play 2 guy on the Jets. I always assumed it was Byfuglien on top power play, and then Trouba on the second one. But actually, it's been Tyler Myers in that role on the second power play. Myers in that role on the second power play, and he's actually quietly putting up a really great season. Myers had 2 assists on Friday at Anaheim, and now has 11 points in 23 games on the season. 6 of them are on the power play. That's a 39-point pace. That is rosterable in most leagues. So people should maybe take a look at Tyler Myers. Meanwhile, Jacob Trouba has been playing less than 20 minutes a game, and he only has 7 points in 23 games, only 1 point in his last 9 games. Like, what's happened to Trouba? Is he in the doghouse or something? He was so good last year, and so far he's been a huge disappointment. Would you swap Trouba for Myers at this point if you could only choose between the two of them?
Trouba is now down almost 4 minutes of ice time per night on average compared to last year's number, and he's still a minute below his career low average time on ice to date. He's never played so little, based on some post-game comments from Paul Maurice. Apparently, he still believes in Trouba being on the top pair that faces the opposition's top players. It doesn't sound like Trouba's quite in the doghouse based on what I've read and heard, but maybe he's just being held to a higher standard, and Maurice is not being so patient if he sees things not working out. Trouba's offensive rate stats this year, if you're looking for production, they're down from what was already a pretty low number. I've been telling you that he's not someone to be presently relied on for offense, but his peripheral rate stats are actually up. So hopefully if his ice time does creep back up, he can help you out some more with hits and blocks. If I'm picking between him and Myers, if I'm looking for points, I'm going Myers. Trouba's pretty low on the defenseman production totem pole.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I agree with you. It's just surprising. Like, Trouba was getting all those points, and last year also he was getting a lot of power play time. Like, I assumed if ever Dustin Byfuglien gets injured, Trouba was for sure going to be on the top power play. Now he's like not getting any power play time. So surprising, I guess, how things changed. Tyler Myers was injured for a lot last year, so maybe Tyler Myers has always been liked better, but now he's finally getting the opportunity to show it. And like I said, he's doing well. Actually, Myers even currently has more points than the top power play defenseman Dustin Byfuglien, who is actually on an 8-game pointless streak right now. What are you thinking about Byfuglien? Like, are you expecting him to bounce back and this is just like a nice buy low opportunity? Or are you worried that this may be the end of the line for him? He's still taking a lot of shots and hitting a lot. But like I said, no points lately.
You're right in a way that he's been doing okay. His hits per 60 minutes, his hit rates, which you can find over at Natural Stat Trick, they've actually improved over last year, but his shot rates are actually down, which at this point of his career is to be expected. He's on pace for about 40 fewer shots than he notched last year. But even so, Byfuglien has yet to score on 54 shots. So even if last year, like, he had a low shooting percentage, it dropped, we thought maybe it's a new normal, we'll see what happens this year. Even if he doesn't exceed last year's low shooting percentage, which was in the 5-6% neighborhood, that would normally still be good, or 54 shots would normally still be good for Byfuglien to score 3 or 4 goals. I think Byfuglien's going to bounce back, but not quite up to previous heights. I would keep your expectations to 50 points rather than 50 plus.
Yeah. So interesting. And yeah, Tyler Myers is in the wings if Byfuglien continues to struggle. Though I don't think he's going to get bumped from the top power play at least this year. And 50 points is still pretty good for a defenseman, of course. Though probably people drafted him for a little bit more. Okay, let's go to Edmonton. They've shaken things up again. I feel like at this point it's really hard to rely on line combinations in Edmonton for good reason. Like they're struggling as a team. Like last week we talked all about Drake Caggiula playing with Connor McDavid, and we're like, oh, maybe he's good for a flyer. And he actually did okay. Like he got some points over the week, but now he's gone. The lines today were McDavid with Lucic and Mike Camilleri on the top line. So a nice improvement for Camilleri. There's even word that potentially Camilleri would play center and McDavid would play right wing, which could you imagine if McDavid got right wing eligibility in fantasy? That would be huge for his owners, but obviously hasn't happened yet. I wouldn't get too excited. These lines could change in the next game, though. Went okay today. McDavid assisted on a goal from Adam Larson, and Michael Camilleri got the other assist. So and the Oilers won against the Bruins 4-2. So maybe these lines will continue going into next week. I'll also mention, so line 2 or 3, I guess it's hard to know what were the second and third lines. They went with Maroon, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Slepyshev, and then Caggiula with Draisaitl and Ryan Strome. So I guess I'll ask for now, while these are the lines, is it time for people to jump on Camilleri on the top line? Is it maybe time to drop Pat Maroon, even though he actually scored a goal today, but he's off the McDavid line? And also, are you concerned about Leon Draisaitl now not only not playing with McDavid, but playing with Caggiula and Strome, two guys who like are pretty much nothing?
That is definitely a challenge for Leon Draisaitl. You should be worried about the Oilers as a whole. It looks like they're going down. They're not doing well. It's been a while that they've been on this downward slide. There has not been a lot of sunlight to believe that things are going to bounce back up. But as always, water is wet, grass is green. You want the guys who are playing with McDavid. When they're not playing with McDavid, you might not want them at all.
Yeah, actually, Draisaitl had a goal and an assist today, and his second goal right at the end of the third period was assisted by McDavid and Lucic, so maybe things just changed up there, but I have a feeling, well, we'll have to check. Again, like, before you grab Camilleri, like, check the line combinations before Tuesday's game and make sure he's actually still there, because these lines change all the time.
Of course, and that's who I was sort of getting at with saying that's who you want playing with McDavid. The only other unconditional own is Leon Draisaitl. I don't mean to put down what he's able to do away from McDavid, but like you said, it's going to be hard with his current line mates. How did the Oilers get so thin up front?
I don't know. Taylor Hall's doing pretty good over in New Jersey. Anyways, okay. In St. Louis, there's some guy named Vince Dunn who was on the top power play for the Blues yesterday, along with Shen, Schwartz, Tarasenko, and Pietrangelo. So yeah, Vince Dunn, he's a defenseman. He has 5 points in 24 games so far. I'd literally never heard of him before I saw this yesterday. Any idea why he was there instead of like Steen or Stasny, who have been there before? Who's Vince Dunn?
Vince Dunn is a second-round draft pick, a late second-round draft pick in 2015. He was picked by the Blues. So with the Blues, first pro season was last year, played with Chicago of the AHL, had 45 points in 71 games. This year he has, well, you said 5 points in 24 games. I don't know, Elon. I don't know what he was doing on that top line. I haven't been able to find that info. In fact, you telling me finding out from you today was, to be honest, the first I had seen of it. So I guess we'll just watch and see if he stays there. I'm not going to count on that happening, though. I have no idea. I'm baffled. Okay. If anyone knows, tweet us.
Yeah, so at Keep It Karlsson, if you want to tweet at us. Yeah, something to watch. I wouldn't be rushing to add Vince Dunn, but definitely if he's going to stay on that top power play, that's like a Tim Heed type situation, and he did okay on the top power play in San Jose, and I wasn't expecting that to happen. So let's watch and see what happens with this Vince Dunn situation. I'm sure it's a bummer for the Parayko owners who are like, oh, if you want to put a defense on the top power play, Colton Parayko, he's right there. Just put him. But no, he stays on power play too. A patron of ours recently lamented. He was telling us like that Alex Pietrangelo has cooled off and he wishes he sold high and was really sad about it. Just wanted to mention, I took a look. I read his note. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put down Pietrangelo to look into for today's show. I took a look. Yeah, Pietrangelo is pointless in 2, but he put up 3 and 5 shots in those games. He has 3 goals and 4 assists in his last 10 games. So, like, I'm not too worried. It looks like he's still doing really well. Like, I hope you weren't expecting him to keep up a point per game pace all the way through. I think 7 points every 10 games, if he could give you that, that's great. Or Brango.
Sorry, I'm here. If who can get you 10 points?
Oh, okay.
Pietrangelo.
If that
Can you
strategy
hear
could
me?
get you 7 points every 10 games, I think that's great.
Yeah. Um, yeah, for sure. That's great. If you held on to him hoping that he was going to keep up exactly what he'd done in like the first 8 or 9 games of the year, you were never going to get that. And to be honest, you were never going to get full value for that either if you tried to sell him. So don't feel too bad if you held on to him all this time to still have some really great production from a defenseman in your lineup.
Yeah, and on a St. Louis team that keeps scoring, they're doing really well. Braden Shen, man, keeps producing. We already talked about him last week. Let's go to Washington. More line combo changes. Ovi and Kuznetsov have finally been split up. Ovechkin put up a hat trick yesterday, playing with Backstrom and Tom Wilson. So now Ovechkin is on a 3-game goal scoring streak with 5 goals in those 3 games. Unsurprisingly, Nicholas Backstrom is on a 3-game assist streak himself and has 4 assists in that span. Backstrom's already back up to 19 points in 24 games. So, we talked about earlier when he was on that cold stretch, might be a good time to buy low. Hopefully you did. Now he's back playing with Ovechkin, and he's inching his way back to a point per game pace, which is something close to what you can usually expect from Nicholas Backstrom. Then the second line on Washington has been Oshie with Kuznetsov and Vrana, and they're looking pretty good themselves. They're all at least a point per game or higher in the last 3 games. Obviously, small sample size, but that's how long it's been with these new line combinations. Vrana has 3 goals overall in his last 3 games. Maybe worth another look now that he's back in the top 6. I would think he was dropped down out of the top 6 for a while, and we said forget about him. Now he's back. If he's a free agent, maybe people should add him, right?
Yeah, you should definitely add him. He's definitely worth another look now. Vrana worked himself back from being a healthy scratch and now is up into the top 6, which is probably where he should be when the alternative is someone like Devontae Smith-Pelly or that Chandler guy.
Chandler Stevenson. Who knows? Maybe he'll get back there. But right now, things are looking okay for Vrana, playing with Kuznetsov and TJ Oshie. Brian, what are we going to say about TJ Oshie? He's now up to 22 points in 25 games. He's going to match his 68-point pace from last year, isn't he? I feel like we kept saying all throughout the summer, and, oh, there's no chance. He had such a high shooting percentage. No way he does it again. So far, he's held on to that same high shooting percentage that he had last year. It's like almost 100 games now of this 23% shooting percentage. At what point do we have to say that maybe he can just keep this up?
I'm going to tell you to hold the phone here. Oh, no, sorry. Well, hold the phone. If you are just looking at TJ Oshie's shooting percentages, you'll notice that not only has his shooting percentage remained steady, but his even strength shooting percentage is actually quite normal so far this year at 11%, which is right where he'd been for the last couple of years he'd spent in St. Louis. But this is all just a smokescreen because I am about to take TJ Oshie down a notch from what you think he might be able to.
Oshie for sure doesn't care. You've been trying to take him down a notch forever, and he keeps on putting up near point per game paces.
Okay, well, here's the thing about his production so far this year. Note that TJ Oshie has just 3 goals at even strength, and that's no doubt a function of a marked decline in his shot rates, which we actually weren't expecting the same way we were expecting his shooting percentage to regress. That was one thing we were expecting to see happen. I didn't see his even strength shot rates getting worse than they were last year, which should be harmful. However, lucky for him, his power play shooting percentage has pushed his full season number, his all situation shooting percentage number, into the same low 20s neighborhood as it was last season. So you might say, hey, maybe he's now just a 23% shooter. But then you look at what he's done with the man advantage, 7 goals on 15 shots. You don't need me to do the math for you to know that that's nearly a 50% conversion rate, and it ain't gonna last. Those 7 goals match his power play goals mark from all of last season, and that's where I'm going to expect to see a decline going forward. You can hope that Oshie keeps this pace, but I still see a real great sell high opportunity, albeit one that would be difficult seeing him produce this way for coming up on 100 games. And that Washington power play is a well-oiled machine, and it's not as weird to have a wildly high shooting percentage there as it would be on most any other NHL team. That said, it is driving his goal scoring far too high, and he's not going to be able to continue producing at this pace for the 2nd year in a row.
Okay, so Brian, what are you more confident in? These Vegas players not scoring as much or Oshie not scoring as much moving forward?
Can I say equally?
Okay. Well, you said with Vegas, people shouldn't listen to you.
Yeah, but Oshie people should.
Okay. In Vancouver, it looks like Alex Edler is officially locked in as the top power play defenseman. On paper, this is a nice looking top power play unit with Edler, then Brock Besser, Horvat, and the Sedins. And Edler was pointless today, but had 3 straight games with assists before that. He's been taking 2 or 3 shots in each of his last 6 games. He's had 3 or 4 blocks in most of those games as well. I feel like it's definitely looking like Alex Edler is worth a pickup at this time. Like we talked about Michael Del Zotto earlier in the season. Everything I liked about Del Zotto, I'm seeing in Alex Edler right now.
Yeah, if you own Michael Del Zotto, you should own Edler now. Easy. Even if you didn't jump on Michael Del Zotto, I'm one of the people who didn't. I am more enticed by Alex Edler.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a couple years ago when Alex Edler was a pretty solid fantasy owned and mode. Yeah, I mean, it's just a couple of years ago that Alex Edler was a pretty consistent fantasy only. He was owned in most leagues. Then he got injured and he had all those issues. It seems like when he's healthy, and now that Vancouver has some good players, like, before we didn't have Horvat and Besser on the top power play and at even strength to help him produce. So yeah, things are looking good for Alex Edler. I would definitely grab him if you need a defenseman. Also on Vancouver, we've got Louis Eriksson, who's looking to be settling in very nicely on his line with the Sedins since he came back from injury. He scored today. He's up to 3 goals and 3 assists in his last 5 games. He's another guy that's probably available to you in your league, even though he's on this hot streak. So you might want to consider adding Louis Eriksson at this point.
And not just Louis Eriksson, but how about the Sedins having meaningful fantasy production recently? Before today's games, Henrik had 4 assists in his last 3 games. Of course, 0 shots on goal. Very Henrik Sedin. And Daniel had 4 points in his last 3 games as well, with 2 goals and 2 assists and 6 shots. So not quite the levels we're used to seeing from the Sedins. It's really just a 3-game sample, but it is a good thing for them that Louis Eriksson is back in the lineup, and all of that line is worth at least considering.
Okay, so let's say like Daniel Sedin and Louis Eriksson are available. Who would you take first? Eriksson's on a hotter streak now. Daniel Sedin's on the top power play.
Yeah, I think I'd take Daniel Sedin, then Louis Eriksson, then Henrik Sedin. And Henrik, of course, goes to the bottom of the pile just because he doesn't get any shots on goal.
Right. So obviously in a points only league, your ranking might be different. Maybe Henrik Sedin would be at the top of the list. Anyways, okay, Brian, let's end the show. I've got a couple hot streaks and a couple cold streaks, both clumped together on the same team. So I'm excited to tell you. First, I'm going to tell you what do you want first? Hot streaks or cold streaks?
Give me the cold.
Okay, we'll start cold. Start with the bad news, end with the good news. I'm going to your favorite place, the place where this hat was probably, if not manufactured, then sold. Let's go to Ottawa.
Hat?
What?
What hat?
Oh, right. This is an audio show, isn't it? I'm wearing my Erik Karlsson hat, my Ottawa Senators Erik Karlsson hat. It's a red hat. I'm also wearing a kind of reddish jumper, so they kind of match. I'm curious to know what the people think. Anyone here in the chat room, let me know if you like my style for tonight. For those of you listening and wishing that you could be checking out my style for the night, we do this live every week, keepingkarlsson.com/live, FYI. And a bonus show for the patrons on Thursdays. But okay, we're going to Ottawa to talk about some cold streaks, Matt Duchene and Erik Karlsson. But let's start with Duchene. He finally scored his first goal as a Sen yesterday in his 8th game. Looks like he was on a sweet-looking line with Hoffman and Stone, so they had shaken those up. The goal was on the power play, though, so it's not as if that line got any points. But is that power play goal a sign of things to come? Or should all the people who held on to Duchene forever, waiting for this trade, and they were so excited, should they start coming to grips with the fact that he's probably not much better than a 55-point player? Tell me if that's even too high.
No, I don't think that's too high. He's getting primo opportunities with Ottawa. He's getting great deployment. He's playing 2 more minutes per game with the Senators than he was with the Avalanche. He has 27 shots in 8 games with Ottawa, so just over 3 shots per game. With Colorado, he had 23 shots in 14 games, so 4 fewer shots in 6 more games. Ottawa is a very good place for Matt Duchene to realize his potential, and it's going to happen. The upside might not be reached. We would hope that he can get up to 65, 70 points as he did in his sophomore season and as he did one time since then. But at least now we should keep our expectations tempered until he does get rolling with the Senators. But still, I think a tempered expectation is reasonable to still be at 55.
Okay, and so that's fine, 55, fine. We'll see if he can do it. I guess if he stays on this line with Stone and Hoffman, I was kind of bummed about Duchene not being on a line with Mark Stone, and he was playing with, who? It wasn't very good players, like Peugeot and someone, if I recall correctly. But anyways, if you could stay with Stone and Hoffman and be on the top power play, then you'd hope he'd get a 55-point pace. And Brian, Erik Karlsson, like, you would have thought if we were going to be lauding a Karlsson on an episode of our show, it wouldn't be William, but that's how things are right now. Erik Karlsson is pointless in 6 games. And I can't imagine that's happened too often in the past, like 5 years. Like, has there ever been a stretch where Erik Karlsson went 6 games without a point? Like, I remember we talked about this earlier this season with Nick Backstrom, and it was like, when's the last time he's gone on such a cold streak? I can't remember a time when Karlsson was pointless for so long. What is going on with him?
Well, he's having a not the greatest offensive season, and actually he's having trouble scoring goals, Elon. Just 1 goal on 45 shots this season. That makes a 2.2% shooting success rate, where he's used to seeing 7%. That's one issue here. Everything else is actually looking pretty good. He's still taking a very healthy number of shots, not slowing down there. He had a 5-shot game, a 6-shot game recently, a couple 1-shot games, which isn't great, but we focus on the good that Erik Karlsson does here. He usually washes out those little spots of bad, and I think this spot of bad is also going to be washed out. One reason why he and Duchesne are struggling is because the Senators as a whole are struggling on the power play. The Ottawa power play has just 1 power play goal in their last 23 opportunities over 6 games. They have just 3 power play goals in their last 9 games, which means that if you're starting any of them in fantasy, including Erik Karlsson, including Matt Duchesne, including Hoffman, including Stone, including Brassard, you're seeing less on the score sheet. They're not getting those power play goals. It is a known problem, at least amongst the Ottawa fans. Unclear yet as to whether management is taking steps to remedy this disappointing power play. It's certainly being talked about. I assume one way or another, though, it will still come back, whether they make super meaningful changes or not. Their shooting percentage on the power play will improve, and they'll be able to score at least a little more often than once every 6 games with the man advantage.
Brian, they already did address the problem. They traded tourists and all their prospects for Matt Duchesne. What more can they do?
I don't think that had anything to do with fixing the power play.
Okay, let's go to a hot streak to end the show. We're going to the Islanders. I want to talk about Barzal and Leddy. So let's start with Barzal. He's on a 6-game point streak right now. He's up to 23 points in 23 games on the year. Point per game pace for Matt Barzal. 8 of those points are on the power play. The rest of his line, the rest of his points have come from playing on his line with Eberle and Andrew Ladd. Before, a few weeks ago, it seemed like Clayton Keller was running away with the Calder race. But at this point, Barzal, is he the front runner now that he's at a point per game? Or maybe Brock Besser, who has 22 points in 21 games? I'm curious, Brian, forget about the Calder race. How would you rank Keller, Barzal, and Besser in terms of who you would like best for the rest of this year in fantasy?
I think I'm going to go Besser. He seems to be the one who's going to get the most consistently good deployment. Barzal is doing great and is playing so well. Unfortunately for him, he seems pretty stuck on the second line, although he does get Jordan Eberle, which is a pretty good line mate on the second line. But he's missing out on that top line. He's missing out on that top power play, which is why he's not up there with Besser on my list. And Keller, well, he's being streaky. How can I like the guy right now?
Brian, Barzal's on the top power play. Don't sell him short.
Sorry, top line is where I should have stopped that sentence.
And also, Brock Besser is on a line with Horvat and Berchi. And, maybe the top line of Vancouver, you could say, is Daniel Sedin, Henrik Sedin, and Louis Eriksson.
I don't think so. That line has crushed it. Granted, on and off this year, and Besser sure has, seen his production come and go as well. But on the whole, I'm pretty happy with that line. And I'm also comparing to Keller being bumped down to not playing, essentially, as if he's not playing with Stepan, then he's nowhere in the lineup.
Right. I would say Barzal I like better because I think his power play that he's on, that top power play with Tavares and company, Bailey and Anders Lee and Nick Leddy, who we'll get to in a second, they're killing it. And he's looking really good as a solid second line center on the top power play. It's tough. That's close. It's very exciting. And it'll be fun to see who ends up winning out for Rookie of the Year. We also have Butcher and some other players that we've talked about. It's been a really fun year for rookies. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about Leddy. He's on fire himself. 10 points in his last 7 games. He has 20 points in 23 games on the season. Is this prime sell high time for Nick Leddy? Or do you think he's going to beat his career high of 46 points, which he put up last year?
He could. Steady Leddy, who's never been that exciting of a fantasy guy, is really crushing it over the last, couple years now. He had 40 points essentially in the 2 years prior to last year. So 2 and 3 years ago, Then he had 46 last year in what was kind of a breakout, although not much change. He still took similar amount of shots. He still got similar amount of minutes. He was just able to convert more often or get in on goals more often. And the same thing has happened this year. Now, his IPP is currently at a career high. Last year was a career high at 48%. This year, it's up to a rounded 57%, which is probably going to regress somewhat, which is why he's not going to come up with a season total of 75 points. But he seems to be a pretty safe bet for 45 points or maybe even more.
Yeah, very exciting. Steady Letty, as people have called him in our Facebook group. He's been very steady, more than steady this year. He's been amazing. Yeah, this Islanders team, when they get hot, you know, they get a lot of points. If only their goalies could be more reliable, they could be a pretty great team. But that's a shame. Brian, we're done. Another show. Look at that. You
wow,
hopefully
oh. Are you going or am I?
You go.
Wow, and just in time to watch the last 2 minutes of the Grey Cup.
Really? Okay, you got 2 minutes? Well, then I got to really speed up here as I conclude our festivities. I hope you guys listening enjoyed what you heard. If you did, let us know. We like to hear. Tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. You could throw us a good job, guys. Or even better, you could throw us a 5-star review on iTunes with a good job, guys. We'd really appreciate it. It would help us out. If you want to become a patron of the show, last week I changed my voice. I tried my best to, ask for some patron support. It didn't work out that well. We didn't actually get any new patrons last week, but that's okay. Maybe this week. Check it out, keepingkarlsson.com/patron. We offer lots of perks. We actually have a really fun new thing we're trying out on Wednesday, a patron hot takeoff, where Brian, myself, and Dave Betton will be judging the hot takes of the patrons. So we're going to have some fun with that. And if you're interested in playing along or listening to that, you can get access to that and all of our other bonus content. Just sign up at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But with that, let's cue the outro music. And Brian, I'm just going to pause for a long time now so you miss the rest of the Grey Cup.
Rude.
Go ahead and read us the credits.
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and supported by our patrons, including we did have one new one. Welcome, Ethan C. Happy to have you. Enjoy the bonus episode this week. This show was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dobber Prospects, Corsica, Natural Stat Trick, The Athletic, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Fantrax.
You know, Brian, you are correct. I did miss Ethan, but he's only a $1 patron, so he's not going to get access to the bonus content. He doesn't get anything.
Oh, maybe we should just leave that part out.
We'll just but then what if Ethan messages us and is like, hey, where's my bonus content?
I don't know what to say. Do you want me to say that part over?
You had to correct me, and now you're going to miss the Grey Cup.
Let me just say, do you want me to say it over?
Sure.
This episode of Keeping Karlsson was presented by Dobber Hockey and supported by our patrons.
Wait, no, I'm not going to cut.
That's it. Just move that forward.
It's hard.
Just snip, snip. That's like 5 seconds.
Snip, snip. You know, I wish I could go watch the Grey Cup. I gotta do all this.
There's a minute. There's 85 seconds left. It's a tie game. Can I go watch now?
Okay. Great job as always, Brian. And thank you everyone again for listening. We'll catch you all with another live episode next week.
Until then, keep on keeping Karlsson.
Maybe the game will go into overtime.
All right, I'm out. I'm gone. Good night, everybody.
Bye. I'll stick around. Who here wants to come join me for a chat right now? Here's the link. If anyone wants to come chat with me while Brian goes to watch the Grey Cup. Normally we do a little bit of a post-show chat.
Okay, well, I can comment on the Grey Cup that I'm watching.
Oh yeah, can you watch it from here? Or do you have to go to your family room? I'm sure you're the type of person you've got probably one TV, no TVs in the bedroom. You got your family room. You're gonna grab your remote and your little oh, and I'll bet you buy a bag of chips, but then you pour it into one of those bowls, and you have your nice bowl that you bring out, and you're gonna eat chips. Am I getting this right?
No, I have it. I'm watching it as you go on. And
how are you watching it?
That you're saying, well, I bet you don't have the right tech set up to watch this, and you might also have a little ritual that you do.
I don't know. I just think of you as an old guy, I guess.
Because I watch live sporting events and Jeopardy.
Lots of reasons, and your sense of humor.
Uh-huh.
It's okay. Hey,
Uh-huh.
I'm older than you, so it's good. It works out. Like maybe we even out. I'm not
It
saying.
makes you feel good to call me old. It makes you feel younger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have
All
nothing
right.
to do. No one wants
How's
to come
this?
chat, so I guess we could just end it. Sorry, you're watching right now. How are you watching? Just on your computer?
Yeah.
Like on another window? Like you've got this chat with me and then the window of the Grey Cup?
Yeah.
So what's happening? What's the score?
24-24, first and 10 for Toronto on the Calgary 25. 1 minute and 15 seconds left.
Wait, sorry, that went fast. So it's tied, and Toronto has the ball on the Calgary 25.
Yeah, so they're in field goal range. So
And it's
but the
first?
clock won't run out long enough, so
It's
it'll be
first
a
down?
risky proposition. Second and 10 now.
A little bit, and then go for that field goal and kill out the clock? You're saying that's not possible?
It's harder to run out the clock in the CFL than the NFL.
Oh. Well, very exciting though. It looks like they're just gonna, but that's kind of boring way to end a game, right? With a field goal. They should change the rules of football. There should be like a field goal can't win the game. What do you think?
Okay, you should suggest that.
How can we
Oh,
maybe
he dropped it.
what is that? He
He
dropped it in a
dropped
fumble?
it.
Fumble?
No, no, it was like a sure catch. And like it's snowing. The field is covered. They've been shoveling the lines the whole
Oh.
game. They've had to shovel the yard lines. And Calgary's now going to get another possession.
Okay, so they're going to kick the field goal right now?
Probably.
Well, it's
I
third
mean,
down. There's only 3 downs, right, in the
oh,
CFL?
slipped right through his hands. Yeah, so it's third down. So the Argos are going to field goal probably.
Who are you cheering for? I don't even know who you're cheering for.
I don't have a horse in this race.
I'm from Toronto. Do you think there's going to be some sort of parade outside if Toronto wins this game?
Yeah. So
You're
now
gonna
you're
go out?
cheering for Toronto.
Woo! Argos! I should go get a hat.
And it's good.
Okay.
So Toronto's up by 3 and Calgary has 49 seconds.
What did you just send me? A YouTube video? Oh, to watch it live.
Uh-huh.
What? How's this legal?
Well, it may or may not be.
Who's streaming this? I guess you get. Who cares, right? Nowadays, I feel like it's like, especially for a sporting event, they have a million ads on the field. They show ads as commercials. Why would they care? Like, it should be legal to stream it.
Tyson Jost was recalled.
Cool. Why? Is someone injured?
I don't know.
Yeah, so Tony's asking a lot of questions here. Now you got to explain the intricacies of Canadian football. Yeah, only 3 downs in Canadian football, not 4. So there's more passing plays. So we're very proud about that as Canadians. I guess is there like a shorter shot, not shot clock. What do they call it in football?
Play clock.
What's it called?
Play clock.
Yeah, so is it shorter in the CFL than the NFL?
Well, you just don't have as many downs to work with. And they might start it. Like it might automatically, I think it stops automatically after each play. And then they start it at your huddle. So like there's not like a guaranteed like 10 seconds lost between each play.
Interesting. Okay. Seems like good. Yeah, I feel like a lot of these sports, they just need little tweaks to make them more interesting. So maybe CFL is taking the NFL in a good direction. I'm still not a fan of these field goals. Like I guess it makes sense that you should get something for having brought the ball like close but not all the way. But also why? Like, you didn't get the touchdown, you didn't get it.
But
like
you still have to earn it. You still have to get the points. It's not
easy.
automatic.
It's usually like
I feel like fewer points.
Yeah, but like, wouldn't it be more exciting of a game if they just had to go for that first down, and if they don't get it and the other team gets the ball, or you have to punt it? Like, why do you even need to give them this option? Just to make it more fair, I guess.
Well, I mean, maybe it's harder to get into the end zone, so you get a little more scoring.
Yeah, but it's like boring scoring, like field goal. Like this game's gonna be
boring. Field goals can be very exciting.
Wouldn't it be so exciting if this game was like going to overtime and it's like the next team to score a touchdown? Like it's tied right now. Well, now it's not tied, but it was tied. Wouldn't it have been exciting for them to try to go for that touchdown? And if they didn't get it, like, oh well, you didn't get it. Now the other team gets to try to get a touchdown.
Seems pretty risky. I would rather for sure be winning and give the other team the same field position.
Yeah, I'm not talking about as
he dropped it.
Oh, Calgary dropped it?
Calgary, yeah, that almost would have gotten them in field goal position.
Man, these Canadian football players really don't know how to catch a football. It's like the main goal of the game.
I feel like it's pretty slippery, and a lot of them aren't Canadian, so it's like the Canadian Football League. Like this guy was like falling over, slipping in the snow as it went through his hands.
What kind of shoes is he wearing?
I imagine some cleats, some football cleats.
Hmm. Do they wear different types of shoes if it's snowing?
It's a good question. They must do something slightly different.
I feel like Canadian.
Oh, what a
Oh,
catch.
what a catch! All right, so what's
Wow.
so what's the situation? Calgary's got it.
So yeah, but I didn't see where because all the field's covered, so I don't know what yard line is anywhere.
Okay, but like they
Probably
got
like
it
on the
first.
Toronto 40-ish.
How much
Also,
time?
Tony, if you're wondering, in Canadian football, there's a 55-yard line.
Any reason why they play the game like outdoors when it's snowing? That seems like an unfair thing to do.
That's the beauty of Canadian football and Green Bay football occasionally. Another catch for Calgary. 20 seconds left on the Toronto, I don't know, probably 2020.
20? Man, this defense blew it. It was like a minute and they got all the way down the field?
Yeah.
Come
Well, not
on.
even. They had 49 seconds, and they're
I'm
doing a
che-
good clock management.
I'm cheering for Calgary. This Toronto team is a disaster. I don't like these. It's like in hockey when you're trying to hold a lead and then you let the other team take like 6 shots. Like, come on, you gotta I would Oh well. So all right. So it's very very exciting.
Oh, 2nd and 5 into the end zone, interception, Toronto.
What?
That's it. It's
Oh!
over.
They could have kicked a field goal and tied it.
Yeah,
Ah.
but there might be a flag on the play.
Oh. It's so exciting. Might be a flag. Someone cheated. So, was there? How's there might be a flag?
No indication yet that there's a no. I don't think so. I think that's it.
Man.
Oh wait, there is a flag on the ground.
Do you think that afterwards the referees could just be like, let's just throw a flag? Come on. The interception's not a fun way to end it. What? Is there some sort of video review for these flags?
First down, Toronto. So they did take a penalty. There was illegal participation.
What's that?
I'm not sure. It was before the interception happened.
You're not allowed to participate.
So they just get a 10-yard penalty, but they still get to keep the ball.
Oh, but that's not fair. They did illegal participation to get that interception. That's why
I don't think it had any bearing on the play.
This Calgary quarterback must be really embarrassed.
Well, I mean, he went. They probably went. They went for the win. It was a pretty risky play. I don't know why.
I don't know.
And he threw it into double coverage too.
What a dummy. Silly. This game sounds like it's just been a bunch of mistakes.
Well, that was his first interception thrown this game.
This whole game is people missing the ball, like defense, like collapsing. And now it's over. Toronto won.
I've watched about 49 seconds of it.
Would I be like a real jerk right now if I go outside and like totally celebrate and like cheer as if like I wish I had like an Argonauts shirt I could put on.
I wonder how many people in Toronto are reacting at all.
Yeah, probably nobody. Who cares?
We're reacting. You're reacting.
Well, I'm just having fun chatting with my friend. I guess I should go edit the show.
Yeah, and I should go do the write-up.
Yeah. All right. Bye, Tony. I think the game's over.
Thanks for hanging on. I'm sure Tony joins us in congratulating the Toronto Argonauts as this year's Grey Cup champions.
Do these players, like, are they even famous at all? Like, do you think if one of them, like, walks down the street of Toronto, someone will recognize them?
No.
How much are they getting paid?
But they probably played high school or college in a place where they might have been recognized.
Huh.
It used to be a lot of CFL players had to have a second job. Like they played football in between, like their job as like a construction worker or something.
Okay.
To make ends meet. I'm not sure. Though.
I think The Rock was a CFL player.
Yeah, he played for Calgary.
That's fun. Yeah. Is there any footage of that?
Oh, Matthew too. Maybe. I know he referenced it once.
Is that true, Tony? $92 a game.
What does that mean?
That's how much the players get paid.
Oh, $92.
Did we just get paid more doing this podcast than some of the players who played in the Grey Cup?
No, but I feel like the team salary cap is $300,000 or something.
Okay.
Or maybe it's $3 million. It's very low.
I wonder what my company's salary cap is. That'd be pretty fun to like be at a sporting event and be like, I make more than that guy. I don't know why. I don't know why that would make me feel smug. I don't know why I should. Maybe I got lucky. I was able to get a good education. You know, not everyone gets the opportunities that I've had. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, you're just kind of being snotty right now.
Then the Canadian government gave me a scholarship, so I was able to go to university. Like I wouldn't have been able to without that. Well, I could have taken a loan, but then my life would have been harder. Right. Well, good thing the CFL is there to help these people earn a living.
Yeah, well, I mean, these guys get to play football, and they might not. They didn't make the NFL, so they might not get to play football. Especially the Canadians. The Canadians, there has to be a certain amount on each roster.
Oh, that's stupid.
So they definitely wouldn't get to play football.
Is there like a noticeable difference of who are the Canadians?
Usually, the Canadians are like the long snapper. Like they put them in like the less relevant positions because they need to have a certain amount.
What a silly rule for the league.
But it's almost like a defenseman in fantasy hockey. Like if you can get a Canadian who's legitimately a good player, that's a real big boon for your team.
Well, because you get to have an extra American in that case. In a sense, right? If a Canadian is playing like an American, then that's like having an extra American.
Right, exactly. It's like having Karlsson produce like a forward. You have a Canadian produce like an American, and like you've already used your Canadian spot the same way you've already used your defensive slot. So you're good.
That's so silly. What is this league? How's anyone going to take this seriously?
It's a great league. It's very fun. No, but the thing is, nobody takes it too seriously. That's what makes it fun. Everybody knows it's a bit of a joke.
They should do that in the NHL, maybe. They should have a quotient of like a player from each province or state. Like, wouldn't that be kind of fun?
Yeah, I think it would probably be problematic too. What if your team had to field 50% of players from its geographic region?
So which team do you think would be the best?
Toronto would probably be pretty good.
Yeah, that would help. Montreal would probably be okay.
Minnesota.
Oh yeah.
Boston.
What if they had some sort of like you need to have a certain number of visible minorities on each team, to have more representation?
Yeah, what about it?
That would be good, right? Maybe NHL should do that.
Yeah, well, I'd like to hope that they're working towards it.
The NHL doesn't have too many visible minorities. I don't know if you've noticed.
It's not a great league that way.
I actually have, trying to think if I own any visible minorities in any of my fantasy hockey teams. Oh, I got Malcolm Subban in like a couple.
Okay, well, let's not categorize people by whether they're a visible minority or not.
All right, well, you should be proud of me. I have a diverse team.
Okay, all right. I think we're reaching the end.
Yeah? Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm just afraid of where this conversation goes.
Oh, you don't need to be afraid. I'm not gonna say.
No, I'm not afraid.
I'll be okay. All right. Bye, everyone. There's no one here. Okay, bye.
Bye, Matthew. Bye, Tony. I hope you enjoyed.
All right. Well, it's slippery slope. Maybe. I don't know. It's nice to, a lot of companies try to promote diversity. It's important.
Yeah, and the NHL should be doing it. They have Willie O'Ree was the first Black player, but he's not. I don't know. They like to sort of trot him out at certain times, but I don't think hockey has made the same efforts to be inclusive as, well, a lot of sports didn't at first. So.
Yeah, still no women coaches or referees. Why not?
There's a fantastic female Swedish coach who I actually wanted to do a story on once, but it never happened. And there are female referees in the NBA, and I think there's a female coach in the NBA, like assistant coach, perhaps, and maybe in the NFL too.
What do you think is going to happen first? Female coach, female referee, or female president of the United States?
President of the referee.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think coach before referee, actually.
All right, Tony. Look out.
What was that? He's just joking. All right. Let's end this. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a good night.